I'd like to bring this meeting to order, a special meeting of the Villa Park Board of Trustees, November 7th, 2022. Clerk Konecki, please call the roll.
Trustee Salella.
Here.
Trustee Corkery.
Here.
Trustee Kozar. Trustee Kumar. Here. Trustee Murphy. Here. Trustee Patrick.
Here.
President Kazone.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we are here this evening for a discussion of our 2023 budget workshop. And I'll turn it over to Manager Harline.
Thank you, President Kazone. Is that? I don't know if that's registering. Does that help?
Yeah,
That helps. Okay. All right. So thank you for agreeing to schedule this extra meeting so that we could go through a budget workshop and go through a very quick overview of tonight's budget. I would like to say the stars tonight are the department heads who have made their own presentations, chosen what they want to feature before you, done the work, but also, and they'll be able to highlight people in their departments to point out for thanks. But I wanted to add Julie Settles in the finance department, who created this document from scratch after about 1:30 p.m. this afternoon as we were trying to get numbers in and out of the budget. Just to let you know, of course, this is not done. This is a first draft, but she did a fantastic job of making it into a printable, readable, understandable synopsis of the budget. Cheryl Wagner, the administrative assistant, who put this together, made copies, did everything they needed to get me done, set up meetings with the department heads, et cetera, et cetera. The department administrators or administrative assistants, we have Patty Ruiz here, but also Yolanda in Parks and Rec, Deb in Public Works, Doris in PD, and I know I'm forgetting some, so I hope the department heads mention the people who I'm leaving out, but this is definitely a team effort, an opportunity for you guys to discuss directly with department heads some of the key projects in the budget. There is, limited amount of time for questions if we want to get out of here before the lunar eclipse tonight. But this gives you an opportunity to talk directly with departments about their budgets. I gave them a vague notion of what I wanted, and they pulled it together, and I think they did a fantastic job. They're going to be overviews, key projects, budget highlights. This will change. This is not by any means the final version. There's stuff to be cut. On page 5 of the draft budget that we handed out tonight, we show using $2.5 million of the general fund fund balance. That's more than I'm comfortable with. Although even if we did that, that would leave us with well over the target minimum. That would be close. That would still be close to or over 33% budget balance. But that there are a number of different changes that will take place in this budget before we present it to you for final adoption. But this is a beginning. This is a starting point. And from there, without talking anymore, I'm going to hand it over to the finance director, Chuck Howard, to get started with the very abbreviated Budget 101 and highlights of the overview of the budget. Thank you.
I think this is working. I'm not sure. All right, very good. Well, again, thank you all for taking the extra time to come and meet with us in this format, and welcome to our review of the 2023 village budget. I think Manager Harline has made all the thanks that I want to make, and all the staff and the department heads with the compilation and presentation of this document. Most of us are charged with other duties, other regular duties, but we come together annually to perform this necessary and essential task. So I don't want to be remiss in my thanks to all of them, because this is not what they do. The village budget in its final presentation has won the GFOA Governmental or Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the last 29 years. So that big book that you see, it has gotten its recognition, and we are very proud of it, and we're hoping to continue that on in what we have 124 governments in Illinois receive this award, and we are certainly one of them. What is a budget? A budget is a financial operating, planning, communication tool. It's a tool that we use to measure ourselves in our goals here, and budgeting and accounting are different. A budget is a plan, and for Villa Park, it's a plan established under Illinois budgetary law. And accounting is a set of rules for recording revenue and expense. The challenges we face here is balancing revenues and expenses as cost increase more rapidly than our ability to add revenue sources. So it's always a balancing. We're always kind of playing from behind. The budget process, the departments have submitted their budget to the manager, and we have reviewed it. The village proposes this budget, the village manager proposed this budget, and that's really the beginning. Now we're at the public discussion phase of it, and with our discussion and public meetings, we come to an agreement as to what the budget should be, and the village board then adopts this budget and sets our priorities with your feedback and the public feedback. The calendar for budget, the first few steps are underway. This workshop here, our proposed budget, we estimate will be available and online at Village Hall and at the library on November 21st. The public hearing and first reading of the budget ordinance will be December 12th. The ordinance adopted on the 19th to begin our fiscal year, January 1st, 2023. There are different kinds of funds that we account for at the Village of Villa Park. Their main ones are governmental funds, which are tax supported, and business type funds, which are funded by user fees. The operating funds are governmental funds, the capital funds are governmental funds, and the business type funds are kind of a hybrid with both operations and capital. I wanted to include another slide here. The village, the timeline, hopefully we can get to that. There we are. And I wanted to include this timeline here, not just our budget timeline, but the rest of finance timeline here, so everyone knows exactly the deadlines that we must meet. Our meeting tonight, our tax levy that is due to be adopted 20 days before, or past 20 days before adoption. And then again, the publishing online, Village Hall and the library, our public hearing on the budget, the follow-up on the budget, and then some other things that come down the line. We've talked in previous meetings about the DSEP bonds, and those are to be reviewed in the middle of the month. A public hearing we scheduled for the 21st, and on the 12th of December, the first reading of the budget and the tax levy ordinances for the passage on the 19th. So that would be the second reading of the budget and the tax levy and our capital plan. The filing documents that are due to the county clerk are budget and appropriation ordinance, the certificate of budget and appropriation ordinances, the estimated revenue by source, the levy, the certification of the levy, the truth in taxation documents, and a responsibility card. The budget and appropriation ordinance must be filed 30 days after we adopt it, and then it must be certified. And if we don't do that, then we run the risk of property taxes not being extended to us. So we take these deadlines to be gospel, and we must abide by them. So we must do what we need to do to make our deadlines and our filing obligations with the county. Governmental funds, we'll talk about what those are and maybe give you, for those of you who've not been through this before, an idea of how governmental or which funds are governmental type funds, as we talked about earlier. The general fund is our main operating account used for all financial resources not accounted for somewhere else. We've got TIF funds, we say 5 here, but it's really 4 and maybe another, which can only occur on certain projects within the TIF district and funded by that TIF increment. MFT is street maintenance and repair, including salt, a big cost for us, funded by state disbursement based on our population. Hotel motel fund, used for tourist attractions. We use it to maintain our parks. It's the tax on hotel stays here in Villa Park. NESDRA, the special recreation area contribution, funded by tax levy, so we levy directly for NESDRA and use those for NESDRA projects. The recreation fund for rec services, funded by tax levy and user fees. Parks, land maintenance, funded by tax levy and user fees. Debt service, all governmental debt except capital leases funded by tax levy and fund transfers. And working cash, used to keep $700,000 or so in working cash reported in the general fund balance because it cannot be used without dissolving the general fund. The capital funds, we'll read through some of those. The street improvement fund, non-home rule sales tax and grants are used for street projects. We have some other capital funds, which are non-home rule sales tax for infrastructure, home to sidewalk projects, equipment fund, vehicles and equipment. Again, we don't have a long-term funding source. We're using, as we talked about before, the DSEP bonds as part of this funding of our equipment. Land and building, which is our property. Of course, that's no revenue source. Building improvement, facility maintenance and improvement without, again, a revenue source. Stormwater buyout, stormwater projects, combined sewer separation, funded by the monthly fee on utility bills. DUI tech, court fees on DUI cases, must be used for equipment associated with policing drunk drivers. And drug control, which is money seized from drug arrests that must be used for policing drug enforcement equipment and activity. We'll talk a bit about some of the business type funds. Of course, we know we have our water fund and water user fees, and that fund is used for maintenance and operations of our water utility. Wastewater, again, wastewater user fees are charged, and these are expenses relating to maintenance and operation of wastewater utility, and includes expenses for wet weather flow treatment facility, and then our swimming pool, daily and annual admissions, lessons, all those costs related to the pool, and transfer from general fund, and that's again funding the operations of Jefferson Pool. And then, of course, larger operations there. There's a couple of slides here, just a snapshot, and this is kind of moving around as we finalize our budget. But if you look at this pie chart, you'll see we're rather balanced. Property tax is maybe a quarter or so. Charges for services are a big portion of our revenue. Sales tax, certainly. And then we have all other sources, shared revenues from Illinois on various revenues collected at the state level and remitted to us, and then permits. It's good to see this. It means that no one real thing will have the most dramatic thing. Certainly property tax will have an effect on our revenue sourcing, but it's a nice balance to see. And expenditures, most of our expenditures are, general fund expenditures. You see a big portion that's street improvements and water and wastewater, a tiny bit for pools and other capital, and parks and other special revenues, and the TIF expenses too. But we'll get into, as the other department heads come in and speak, you'll see how those are apportioned for our budget. But I've given you just kind of a quick overview of some of those things for those who haven't been part of this process before. And it's our time to really look and create metrics to monitor ourselves and our performance in the next year, and to make sure that we use our resources, again, as we said kind of at the beginning, because we can't keep up with expense. It changes faster than we can find a source for it. So with that, I think I will leave it to Manager Harline to continue forward.
Just a couple more summary slides here before we get the village staff is still operating with the ideas of the items from the prioritized strategic goals set in 2019, and these are all items of that from those strategic goals that are addressed in one way or another in this year's budget. Strategic short-term short-term, the R is I'm losing, anyway, the goal number, repetitive? Anyway. Sorry. Routine. I knew it meant it came back again. Routine goal number 2. We're looking at IT, which is IT to support efficiency and customer service. We're specifically looking in this budget to find some software options to help us respond better, to track requests for service from the public. We had a system that did not integrate well with other things, and it was difficult to use. We made some choices before 4 or 5 years ago on how to set that up and customize it a lot rather than changing our processes to meet the way the software was installed. We changed the software, and so it is difficult to get updates and such because we had it customized. So we're looking at some other solutions, and some that could eventually have a front-facing so that people could actually make a report and track it and have emails sent to them almost automatically, so that we could keep track of when requests come into the village. We're also looking at some updating possibly how our website interacts with the agenda that we sent out to you. There is right now we're using Granicus software. The company that does our website and also owns Municode has a separate software that would make it much easier to post it to the website and some other things. So there are some options that we're looking at there, and then also the possibility of updating our accounting software. Those are all things we're looking at. Those many different places you'll find that our training budget has increased. Strategic goal, routine goal number 6, emphasis on replacing and maintaining street trees. There is Michael Guerra will talk about that. And then one option that if you guys want to, we have in the past put in $50,000 for contract to trim trees. That's not in here right now, but can be added back depending upon what we want to do and the health of the general fund. Strategic complex goal number 1 and 3 and long-term complex goal number 1 can kind of combines a lot of different ideas, but continue aggressive infrastructure upgrades, sewer separation, water mains, sewer main streets, and in one of the strategic complex goal short-term complex goal number 1, shovel-ready projects. These projects which have become shovel-ready by doing the upfront engineering, all those are addressed in projects in this year's budget. There's a little more money for sidewalks, a lot more money than we actually spent this year. There is money in there for funds for a railroad grade separation study. The study alone is looking the first blush, and Michael is trying to find a better number, but the first blush number was about $98,000 just for the study of 4 sites. And then we have a new fire engine that has already been ordered. looking to re-chassis an ambulance, and we are making annual ambulance payments, which is long-term routine goal number 1. Finally, there is, and Mark will talk to you about long-term routine goal number 6. There are funds for a complete comprehensive plan update. The RFP is already sent out. Don't want to steal his thunder. And then there's some other organizational priorities that we're also going to try and address. Funds for strategic planning remain in the budget if you want to revisit those strategic planning goals from 2019. It's getting to be about time. And there's $3,000 for training, but from the Alliance for Innovation to start the what I would like to do is try and build leaders at all levels with a goal towards achieving a type of the servant leadership style of running government. That should flow off my tongue easily. The one thing I told all the department heads was don't just put in a bunch of slides with bullet points, and I made the crummiest slides of all. So anyway, one thing also to remember, we have a new leadership team here, and we're trying to, we're learning from each other. We're getting a good, we got a good energy, and I think we're making some progress, but you know, that's a lot of change, and I think it's for the better. I think we've got new people who are dedicated to serving the village of Villa Park, but we're learning how to do some stuff, and there's still some things where we're improving on our communication, but that's a lot of new leadership in the village, and it's a great team to work with. And you know, we only got Greg, and I guess Mike was March of 2020, so Greg's the only one who knows how to do anything around here. So anyway, and so a couple other things. There will be decisions to make through this process. One is, do we create a TIF fund? Number 7, staff thinks that's probably good. It's contingent, however, upon the board approving a TIF. So if we put TIF 7 in the budget and it's ahead of when you guys approve the actual TIF creation, you know, that's a question for both strategic and you know, there are political considerations there. We have put the current budget has $150,000 to try and cover the loss over the last 2 years for the operation of the pool. It is not a money-making operation. That's about what we usually do, just something to be aware of. We have $2.4 million for equipment replacement that's transferred from the general fund. That's a lot. That's more than we usually do. But we also, there are some promises made from the ARPA funds. That will not be the same number next year. So when we look at that's one of the reasons why there's a spend down in the general fund reserves. We have an obligation to spend some of that money. Our goal is not to just put a bunch of money in the bank. Our goal is to take that money and put it to work for the village of Villa Park. I'm going to bring forward a option to increase ambulance fees. That's something strongly supported by the fire department, but I know that there's been concerns about the cost to residents. Right now, we are one of the lowest. I've got a survey, which I'll share with the board from DMMC about costs charged by other villages. And then finally, we have some requests for funds by commissions, but it's a small amount compared to the whole budget. But we have actually sent out requests for them to tell us what their needs are, and most of them have responded back. Their deadline was November 14th because I wanted to give them a full month, because most of them only meet once a month. So most of them have responded back with responsible requests, and that is all the rest of the introduction. And Community and Economic Development is the first department up. Are there any questions while they're getting set up? Okay.
Matt, on organizational priorities,
Yes.
short-term goals, the way it was laid out, I didn't see a number 4.
Yeah. Oh, number 4. Well, not every. I couldn't find something in the budget that addresses every single goal. Some of them we've already knocked out. I don't remember off the top of my head. Are you saying that one is not represented?
There's not a number 4 to fall in sync with the numerical system that you developed there, and I didn't know if there was something missing that.
I didn't. Not every single strategic one of the strategic goals is included. We may not have hit every single one this year, fiscal year, but budget. All right, Mark McLaughlin and Pat
evening.
Burke, you're up.
Thank you. So I'll start with the community development portion of the community development and economic development budget. First off, this is the updated org chart for our collective departments. This reflects the changes that have already happened this budget year and the additional proposed changes in next budget year. And then I just have a couple of slides pointing out some of the larger projects proposed and some of the potential staffing requests. First, as already mentioned, the comprehensive plan is the largest project that community development is going to be undertaking next year. The RFP has already been released in the middle of October. We're expecting 5 firms to submit formal proposals. We received 5 letters or statements of interest. Firm selection and contract approval would be estimated January of '23, so after the budget has already been adopted. And that is approximately a 12 to 15 month process. So it could actually go into the next budget year, fiscal year, depending on how much we can accomplish this upcoming year. But really the goal of a comprehensive plan is to engage the public, staff, and obviously you to receive input on the ultimate vision of the community, how we present that as a clear message and a unified concept to achieve that vision. How do we enhance quality of life, economic growth? It also looks at optimal land uses and potential regulatory, read that as zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance changes. And then it guides the decisions of annexations, future growth, development, just where do we want to invest in the community. So it's a holistic document. Another project would be the parking assessment of Villa Avenue and the Ardmore Avenue commercial nodes. This is a report and a study. So it's the idea is to inventory existing conditions on the public and private parking spaces within those particular areas, analyze land uses and future demand, what could be the parking demand if it's completely built out, and then draft some potential improvements, and then finally an implementation, how to get where the report says we should be. Then finally, you'll see some larger numbers within our permit review and permit revenue. This is due to the increase in the large developments that are coming down the line. Just as example, the Union, the Rec Center, Casey's, potentially 27 West Park, Ecoterra, Aero Transportation, and then the et cetera is the ones that I don't even know about because they haven't called me yet. So we're still, in October or November of this year, but this budget goes all the way past another year from now. So there will be people that are coming in and say, I want to do something, and we have to start spending some of that money. So really, this is to go to contract plan review and inspections with an outside third party to take these big guys off of my staff's desk so that they can focus on the day-to-day residential, more of the customer service-based inspections and plan review. They have a professional GC. They're working with a national firm, review, plan reviews, inspections. They get in and out instead of our inspectors are there for 2 days doing electrical inspections. So this streamlines that process. And then the good thing about this is the expense, it comes in on the revenue side through building permit, but then goes out, it comes in, but we pay it through basically the fee that we collect. It's essentially, we are the pass-through on this. So it's as budget neutral as possible, but the dollar amounts are significantly higher than you guys have seen before.
Good evening. So as Mark was stating, there's a great deal of economic development activity that's going to be occurring in 2023. The Community Rec Center, that's going to start at Lions Park this spring. Immediately south or in front of that, the Union project is also going to be occurring. And those projects are going to be, the construction schedules are going to be overlapping. So, that area is going to be very busy, very congested. There's going to be a lot of plan review There's going to be a lot of building inspections going on for the next year. And then on the north side of town, Casey's General Store, right across from Target at North and Ardmore, they've already started moving dirt there. So they're going to be working on that site over the winter, and they hope to open April 30th, 2023. And then right next to the train station, Ecoterra, they have demolished their site, and they've relocated the utilities. And they're still hoping to begin excavation this year. So we've got 4 really large projects that are going to be moving forward in 2023. Another initiative that we're looking at that Manager Harline mentioned is that we're proposing to create a new TIF district along St. Charles Road. And it really encompasses all of St. Charles. And then to the far east side, there's a Rotary Park is included. And on basically the very southernmost portion, that's where the Union project is going. So essentially, this new TIF would incorporate all of the existing St. Charles TIF that expires in 2032, and then include all of St. Charles Road. And, we're seeing a lot of development activity in the Old Town area. We'd like to start bringing, those programs to St. Charles. And, some of the projects that we have going on right now, the Kenilworth TIF facade, that was created in 2014 in the Old Town area. About 20 to 30 buildings have gone through that. And then also the Ardmore Historic District, we created a program there in 2020, and that's for interior and exterior rehab. So these are the types of things that we'd like to bring to St. Charles. We could do a facade program up there. We could do a signage program. We could help assemble parcels to do development projects, interior rehab. So what we're seeing in these areas, we'd like to bring to the St. Charles Road corridor. And so as you can see, community and economic development has been very busy this year, and we're going to be even busier next year. And that concludes our presentation.
Yeah, I've got a question on your organizational chart. You have a planner there. Is that a new position you're looking at? Is that going to be typically like an urban planning?
Correct. Yeah, that's a classification from one of the permit tech positions that we had. We had 2 permit techs. One staffer resigned. Instead of backfilling it with an additional permit tech, we're moving that to a planner position.
Okay.
Yeah. So I looked at 21 resumes today to fill that position.
Good, thanks. And we okay with the permitting, the number of people that are in permitting? Because that's always been a problem, with, some of our construction people say that it's always been a problem. Not always, but it's been a problem getting through and getting permits done.
Yeah.
Are we staffed enough there for that?
Yes. Yes, we believe one permit tech with, yes. I don't know how else to answer this. Yes.
Well, one of the reasons Mark approached about doing it this way is that some of the responsibility of that planner would be to help handle stuff coming in, and they'd be able to answer some zoning questions, which have sometimes not been immediately answered, and then they come up later, and then it actually this is to speed that process up.
That's correct. Yeah, the planner position would be covering the front counter for answering zoning, land use, setbacks, that kind of stuff as well, to free up the permit tech to focus on the permit stuff.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, Trustee Kumar.
Along that same line, I have a question. We're becoming more technologically savvy, I assume, with the permitting, which should quicken this process a bit also.
Well, we already allow for online permit requests, but we're trying to look at ways to make it even better, including different, maybe upgrading a software package to do that, something that would integrate better with other parts of the.
Yeah, because I think the problem that President Kazone described can be solved somewhat with a better technological interface, because then some of the work, which is communication, is done automatically.
Agreed.
Yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes, thank you. I would like to see the parking assessment expanded upon. It's a significant issue for us and has been for at least the last 3 years. Part of our challenge is that because we are an older town, back in the day, most of the residences did not have the number of cars that these houses have now. So now there are a significantly larger number of cars per household. So it's causing challenges for the street parking on all our residential streets. And I don't know the answer to it, but I would love to see that looked at. And I know there was some discussion about the parking pads in front of the houses, and the pad had an angle into the driveway. I would be very open to any options that we have, but it's a significant issue. And I believe there's also some of these parking, the no parking signs. I think they're primarily over here, that I wouldn't call them close to the train station, but they restrict the hours, and it was to facilitate commuters, and I don't think there's any commuters parking over there any longer, right off of St. Charles. But that's just a general example. We may want to take a look at some of these, and we've changed some other things, particularly over by the gazebo, and maybe we need to revisit where our signs are and how we're using them, and that could be beneficial. And we also have a significant safety problem during special events on Central from Myrtle to Euclid. It's a 2-lane street with parking along going east, and I would suggest this primarily during special events. When those spaces are all filled up and you're going east, you have to go in the westbound lane, and it's a pretty significant block. So if you get halfway down it and someone is going west and someone comes behind you going east, you're now sandwiched in the middle. I did have a comment from one of the fire people saying if that happens to an emergency vehicle, that will not be good. So we do have some other areas. I don't know how much time or resources we can dedicate to it, but I think parking could be expanded upon.
Well, I would. This marks the expert in this field, but I would think that what he's talking about here, what we've been talking about, is an assessment of parking in these 2 commercial zones. I think that's a very valid point. One of the reasons it's good to have a look at all the departments. I think that would be a separate issue when going back through the planning and the comprehensive plan to look at those kind of parking issues globally throughout the village that are more neighborhood and street parking issues for the most part. And if you just go ahead and
Yeah, it could also look at adjustments to the zoning ordinance to change requirements of current parking. An example is right now, stalls are required to be in a garage as opposed to on a driveway. That's just one right off the bat that if you loosen that restriction, then you can put additional parking in a driveway instead of a garage. Take the cars off the street and put them on the property.
Well, I think part of the challenge is they're not using the driveways. The driveways are staying empty all day, and the cars are parking all along the street.
Trustee Kumar?
I just think that maybe it's a good idea for the comprehensive plan that's going to happen, which we have money in, to have a sort of a wish list kind of things that we want to address as part of the comp plan, including maybe this parking situation as some kind of driver in the plan. So there's no reason not to include that as part of our discussion of the comprehensive plan. But, you know, we need to make a kind of a list of things that we need to look at so that whoever's doing this knows what the village is looking for in the end.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that'll be part of the comp plan.
Yes.
Is bringing in public comment and.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Just goes there.
Yeah, I mean, with regard to the parking thing, I think we're kind of off topic here. Unless Trustee Murphy is suggesting that she wants money in the budget for like a parking consultant or something like that. But I don't really think that's kind of what you had intended on your slide.
No,
as
on
a
this
whole.
particular slide, the intention was for those two
Just for
particular
those
commercial
two
nodes because
particular
they
things,
are
right.
older. So,
Right.
there's many different uses. It's a true mixed-use area.
Mm-hmm.
So actually take an understanding of those two parking from a public and private perspective. That was the
Right.
initial intent of that study and slide, but that doesn't mean we
Thank you.
can't expand on a regular staff level.
And then my only other question here is, as you look at your section of the budget, what are your top priorities? I know you're just, new to the position, but in this coming year, where's kind of your strength? Where do you feel your priority is, as you're kind of assessing our community? Where do you wanna
Honestly,
see support?
the two out of the three that I talked about are really the accomplishing the comprehensive plan and right-sizing community development, the staffing adjustments and contractual. Those two things are very, very important.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
both of you.
Next up, we got the fire department. Thanks, sir. This is interim chief Steve Stapleton. I'm sure you all know, and I'm giving him time. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, there you go.
All right, thank you all for attending. A quick overview of the fire department. Fire department budget's broken up into 4 main categories: administration, protection, prevention, and ambulance paramedics. Our latest organizational chart, when we're at full staffing. As you know, we have 3 firefighter paramedics down due to retirements, and our list is exhausted. We have a fire chief, a deputy fire chief, a full-time administrative assistant. We have a part-time fire inspector. We have 6 lieutenant paramedics, 18 firefighter paramedics, and we have part-time firefighter paramedics on each shift, although we haven't had that position filled in about 8 months. The problem with part-time is they go on to get hired full-time somewhere else. Fire prevention aspect of the budget covers anywhere from open house to pub ed events, public education programs in the schools. We have CPR and first aid classes. And something that we would like to see come back this year, now that COVID is pretty much over, hopefully, thankful, is the Citizens Fire Academy. And maybe even do a joint Citizens Fire and Police Academy this year. I know it's been in the works and talks for a couple of years. Fire protection aspect of the budget covers training, rescue tools, contractual services. And when I say contractual services, I mean like for SCBA maintenance or SCBA air compressor certification tests, and stuff like that. Our rescue tools, we would like the concept of replacing tools little by little, periodically. So it's not a one-time massive asking for money to replace something, where we can replace it little by little every time, just like we do with the fleet. We want to replace engines every so many years, ambulances are so many years, and staff vehicles so many years. Our PPE, we budget for 4 gear replacements a year. That gives us almost an 8-year rotation on our fire gear. Our specialized rescue, we got hazmat, technical rescue, water rescue, and again, we replace safety equipment slowly per year. Our ambulance operations budget covers the majority of the staff minus administration. One new goal of this year, and I believe it falls in line with the prioritized strategic short-term goal of exploring opportunities and methods for maintaining the staffing levels in the fire department. I already explained that we're short 3 and we're in the process of retesting, and we will hire them as soon as we can. But what I come before you today is asking for the consideration of hiring 3 additional firefighter paramedics. And why? If you see, our call volume over the last 10 years has increased over 22%, and our staffing has not increased to meet that demand. This doesn't take into account the future developments of 2 major apartment complexes that are going to put a continual strain on the fire department with the current staffing that we have. Our minimum manning per our current collective bargaining agreement is 6 personnel per day. That's 3 at each station. We're at 6 personnel 63% of the time. So with that, if it's an ambulance call, they go on the ambulance and the lieutenant follows in the car. If it's a fire call, they all go on the engine. If it's 2 ambulance calls, we have 2 lieutenants in staff vehicles. The fire engine is not manned. With the addition of 3 additional firefighter paramedics, that would allow us to increase our minimum manning to 7, to at least guarantee we have a partially staffed engine available all the time, whether that's to assist in ambulance calls, assist in a show up to a fire. At least we have an engine available and not just the vehicles. I know this is a big ask and it's a proposal, but it's an operational weakness that we identified, and with your help, I think we can achieve it. Funding for this can be 75% of our calls are EMS based, and that's with the proposal of the ambulance fee increases. We are a member of the GEMT, which we'll get into when we do the ambulance increase. But there's options to offset costs, maybe hire 1 per year for the next 3 years, possibly looking into hire contract firefighter paramedics to fill that role. That'll be up to you guys to give direction. Ambulance operations continued. We're putting in the budget for 2 power stair chairs. We've had a recent rash of fire department injuries carrying patients up and down stairs. And so hopefully with these chairs we can alleviate some of that. One of which is a long-term injury. It'll probably be out a year with the shoulder injury. Normal EMS supplies that we rotate, continue to buy. And I was talking about the GEMT, which we are already a part of. And that's where we're looking to go to a cost report type of ambulance fee increase. And that'll be up to you guys. Another one is, which we're currently doing, is the vehicle equipment replacement, another prioritized strategic long-term goal. And I know you guys have all heard Chief Ron always constantly telling you that we need this, we need that. But when you replace vehicles on a rotation, then you can take that surprise mechanical breakdown out of the equation, especially for first response emergency vehicles. Engine 80's being replaced. Thankfully, we got into queue. Unfortunately, it's almost a 2-year wait for an engine. And the reason why we got into queue in February was we not only saved about $60,000 in fee increases, but we got into that almost 2-year wait for the new engine. Same thing with the ambulance rechassis. It's going to be at least a year to a year and a half out just to get an ambulance, which is a continuing trend in all equipment. One thing I'd like to see is the village does a fire apparatus reserve fund. Maybe we should create one for an ambulance reserve fund too, since we're buying new ambulances every 3 years, giving it a 9-year service life. One thing I'd like to see in calendar year 24 is 2 new staff vehicles, one to replace 2 aging vehicles. And then unfortunately, we live in a time where we need ballistic gear to be part of the rescue capabilities for situations. Some non-capital outlay that we suggested was key fobs for stations 81 and 82s. This is a security issue to keep the vehicles secure, or I'm sorry, the stations secure at all times. Replace the overhead garage doors at Station 82. I don't know if you guys ever driven by there, but they're rusty and they are in need of replacement. Station 81 air compressor. And then something to think about is the village AEDs for calendar year 24. They usually, the fire department coordinates the purchase of those, and we are going to be doing 24 for those. And I believe that's around a $45,000 purchase for all vehicle, for the AEDs that go in all village, the police department vehicles and the village buildings, and obviously the fire department has 2 of them. Any questions?
I got a couple, you mentioned ballistic gear. What did you mean by ballistic gear?
Ballistic gear includes a ballistic vest and a ballistic helmet.
So they don't get shot.
Yeah.
Correct. For active shooter situations, so we could be part of the rescue task force with the police department to get in there with them. Not, obviously not initially, but right now we have our SOGs in place, but we don't have the ballistic gear,
Okay.
which is definitely a high priority.
Okay.
Yes.
You're looking to
Hang
hire,
on a second. I've also, we've gotten grants in the past for like fire trucks. A couple years ago, we got like $500,000 from
Yes.
our senator, our state.
AFG, the Assistance
yeah.
Firefighter Grant.
Are there still a lot of grants out there for this type of equipment?
Unfortunately, the only grants out there for fire departments is the Firehouse Subs Grant, which we're actively put in for grants every quarter, and then the Assistance of Firefighters grants, which I've, like Chief Ron said, I've wrote the majority of them, and we've been pretty lucky. I think the last tally was about $1.6 million in grants that we've got for the fire department. So they're out there. Right now, we have a grant outstanding from AFG we haven't heard back from, and they are about 8 months behind schedule on their grants for thermal imaging cameras. And if we had any left over, we would try to purchase one of the stair chairs with the grant funding to get reimbursement.
Right.
But now, next year, a new priority would be, absolutely, we would go for maybe the ballistic gear, or we have a meeting with the lieutenants. We do go over like a risk assessment and say, what do we absolutely need? We'll talk to the manager and see what our priorities are, and we would definitely, we're gonna go for grants for that.
Okay.
And we are budgeting some money to come from the Foreign Fire organization towards the chairlift. So that's going to offset some of those costs. And Steve has been very good about finding funding sources.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I have a question. You want to hire 3 new full-time firefighters. Does that mean you're going to discontinue that part-time, which is not filled, or what's the situation with that?
No, actually, I would like to see that continue to be funded, but that's something that we can absolutely look at. It's like a kid with an allowance, is we'll try to work within the parameters set.
Because it seems like it's not filling anyway,
Correct.
in general, and it might be better to hire 3 and not even have that part-time position.
The goal of the part-time program was always to supplement our staffing without hiring the full-time. But the problem is we tried it for 2 years. It worked great at first, but then all of them got hired full-time at other places. And I really wish we would have hired a bunch of them because they were really good people. So that could be an option, and that might be the best option to do. Is once we hire them full-time, then
Because you have better retention, I assume, with what you're saying with full-time employees versus part-time, which is always a risk. And then you go through the process and the cost of reassessing, retraining, all of that has costs involved as well.
correct.
So that may be some option, but I'm just throwing it out
That's a
there.
great point.
Trustee Patrick?
Thank you. Chief, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Got a few questions for you.
Sure.
On an average call, how many staff members does it take to run a rig or a truck?
How we run, on an ambulance call, when we're at minimum staffing, we have 3 at each station, 2 firefighter paramedics and a lieutenant. So if it's an ambulance call, 2 firefighter paramedics go out on the ambulance, the lieutenant follows in the staff vehicle. When they get back to the station, if there's a second ambulance call, the other side of town will come up. It depends on the ambulance call. If it's a standard ambulance call where the 3 personnel could handle it, then it would just be each side of the town. But there's some calls, a serious medical call, a cardiac arrest, a serious car accident. We would actually have to have both sides of town respond.
And a total of 6 staff members total between the 2 stations?
Yes, 66% of the time we're at 6.
If you're on a mutual assistant call with another municipality, and an emergency happens in Villa Park, who's covering Villa Park then? The 3 remaining?
The 3 remaining, or we would depend on mutual aid coming into our town.
Do we rely on mutual aid a lot? Or mutual assistance from other municipalities?
We average around 200 mutual aid calls coming into our town and 200 mutual aid calls going out of town.
What's your average call per day, would you say?
Our average call volume is about 8 calls a day. Last year, we ran 3,216 calls. This year, we're on pace to just match that or exceed that call volume.
I think you kind of mentioned it a little earlier. You were talking about you think that those numbers might rise with the new residential projects going on in Villa Park?
It's a possibility, yes.
Okay. How does our average salaries compare to that of neighboring municipalities?
I've never done a cost analysis. I believe that would be,
We don't, ours are lower than that. Our salaries are lower than that.
So we have low salaries and we have a retention problem.
We, right now, we had several retirees and we have had trouble as many departments have had of getting qualified applicants on our list. And Steve, can have a rebuttal too, but right now we have 49
49 signed up to take our test on November 19th.
So one of the problems is the way you have to go through a list and it's there for 2 years. So we're generating a new list but we are down 3. So right now to add the 3 positions he's requesting, that's a +6 from where we are right now. And if we had those 3 filled, the number of our ability to cover more than one call would be greatly enhanced. So that's our first goal, is get those 3 hired definitely.
Our part-time firefighter positions, how much do they make an hour?
I believe they're $20 an hour right now.
$20 an hour?
Yes.
And we're having a lot of retention problems with our part-time staffing because they are going to other municipalities for full-time jobs that probably pay more than our full-time positions.
Again, without an analysis of that.
Yeah, so I think it's almost essential that the board consider adding these 3 staff members just because of it. Well, at the end of the day, it becomes a safety issue for our paramedics and firefighters that are on duty as well.
Absolutely.
And not to mention influx of calls, possibly from new residential areas and so forth. And just with the world the way it is nowadays, I think this would be extremely beneficial for Villa Park to consider. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your guys' consideration.
Trustee Kozar.
I agree with the need for the staff, so I definitely support that. Other than the additional staff, what are your top 1 or 2 priorities in this budget for 23?
There's 3 main concerns: equipment, facilities, and personnel. The equipment, we have a roadmap to take care of the equipment. And fortunately, we have some good equipment if we maintain the replacement schedule. Facilities, again, the nice thing with firefighters are A lot of them are very handy, and we have an excellent parks department that works with us trying to keep our stations up. The manpower is probably the number one identified shortfall that we have right now, as far as running operations and retention. And in the future, there is a shortage of paramedics, and there doesn't seem to be any end to that. A lot of the paramedic programs are run out of hospitals. And for a quick analogy is, say there's 10 paramedics that graduate the paramedic program at Good Samaritan Hospital. 8 out of the 10 are doing it because they can skip a year of residency for a doctor, not to be in the fire service. So those 2 that come out, and in our ordinance, you have to be paramedics. Again, 75% of our calls are on the ambulance. Everyone's a paramedic. I actually kept my paramedic license. I don't go on the ambulance anymore, but so we need to make it Villa Park the place that they want to go to. We have great staff. We have great department heads here, and we got a village board that is unbelievable. You know, they support us. They show up to our functions, and that's why I bring it to you today.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your being
I'm
here.
sure I went over. I apologize for that, but thank you. There's a lot of great questions.
We can try it. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to all of us. First and foremost, we could not put this budget together without the help of all of our supervisors, both Deputy Chiefs Dan McCann and Jeff Runge, as well as my admin assistant, Doris Basenti. And also a shout out to the IT department for coming up with Microsoft 365, which allowed us to put the budget together in a much easier format. First and foremost, what we do, obviously some of it is rudimentary, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. We maintain public order and safety, enforce state and local laws, prevent, detect, and investigate criminal activity, hopefully before it occurs. What do? We also do traffic enforcement, and it is many people's belief in law enforcement that traffic enforcement has a corollary in keeping crime down. So it's very important that we're out there pulling cars over. We also handle a myriad of mental health type calls, substance abuse, domestics, homelessness, and people in mental crisis. And aforementioned special events, we are basically at every special event you can think of. So we're tasked with being at the concert series, all 12 concerts we had this year, the many 5K runs, the bike events, and any holiday event, we're usually there staffing as well. And we also will help out the public in any way that they seem appropriate, like dog calls, trees in the streets, or any panderers that we'll find on the busy streets in Villa Park. And who we are, that's kind of a listing of our personnel, and it's obviously administratively, you've got the 7 patrol sergeants, or 6 patrol sergeants, 1 detective sergeant, our 21 patrol officers, 6 detectives, which includes 1 school resource officer and 1 TAC officer, 6 part-time officers, 2 full-time community service officers, 1 part-time CSO, 1 record supervisor, 6 records clerks, which includes 2 different window clerks, and 1 evidence custodian. And it should be noted, going back to 2009, we had 41 officers, but with the recession hit, there was an early retirement incentive, and we were down to 37. So with each retirement, those officers were not replaced. So we're working much harder, and with the calls for service staying static all these years, and we also, in time, would be requesting more officers, not in this current budget, but with the increase in population between the 2 projects that are coming along, the Union and Ecoterra, we think it's either do a staff study or an increase in personnel. We're also looking at changing how we go about staffing and we're going to propose a 12-hour shift schedule coming up in the next either board meeting or the one after that. So to just try and look at ways how we can send more officers towards peak times and have them readily available for the streets. We're definitely going to be getting a budgetary increase, and some of those reasons are salary increases. Patrol is up 3% contractually. Sergeants are up 3.25%, and then with the civilian contract being proposed in the next board meeting, that's also going to be 3.25%. And between all of that, so that's about 85% of our budget is salaries and benefits. Also, a major cause of budgetary increase is spiraling cost of equipment and vendor costs, and everyone's feeling that all across the board. And lastly, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more detail, is the increase in training due to the Safety Act. With the Safety Act, there's going to be about 30 additional hours that are mandated by state law. So it's basically 10 hours per year per officer, which is going to come down to about $746 per officer for a total additional cost budgetarily of $27,613. So it's basically an unfunded mandate. And some of those trainings include hands-on training, medical response and certification, use of force and de-escalation techniques. And these costs do not include any of the current training costs that we're going to incur on an annual basis as well. As I said before, we're not requesting any new officers, but what we are going to request is a change of status for our part-time evidence custodian, as well as hire an additional part-time community service officer. Both that we feel will have a positive net effect on our budget. First, we'll discuss the full-time evidence custodian proposal. Currently, our part-timer manages upwards of 30,000 different articles of evidence. She's also now trained as an evidence technician, so having her go on evidence scenes and process a police officer or a detective at overtime, you're spending half the money for her to go on those types of calls. We also envision having her doing a background investigations for our detectives, which would free them up to go ahead and work on really important cases in investigations. And also, she can be a part of the Merit Task Force for Forensics. For the part-time community service officer, as I had mentioned, we're also at every special event, and it's always a challenge for us to go ahead and staff those out fully. We have CERT members. We need more CERT members. We have volunteers that will help out with 5Ks and blocking off streets, but we're usually left to kind of scour and go back and forth between the different locations to make sure we keep everybody safe. This same position would also work overnight to write parking citations for vehicles parked in the street, as well as assist with traffic control for extended periods of time for crashes and crime scenes. Some of the new equipment that we're going to be requesting, and 91.25% of our police budget is already obligated between salaries and benefits, pension obligations, and our DUCOM costs for our dispatch. So some of the new equipment that we're requesting is 2 new squads, new body-worn cameras, 2 flock cameras, and those cameras are absolutely worth their weight in gold. We currently have 5 cameras throughout town, which creates a geosphere around our village, which allow us to track any stolen vehicles or potentially harmful subjects that may come in town just based on their plate and type of vehicle. We're also requesting a Cellbrite license. We already have a detective who's trained in that, and we currently are using it, but it's essential for every investigation we have. We're doing a cell phone dump. If we didn't have this license, our detectives would be forced to go to the county and get these cells dumped and getting all the information from it for every investigation. We're also requesting an evidence drying cabinet, which is essential for any serology or dried blood stains on any clothing we may have. Also, building maintenance, we're looking for an increase in the budget. We also would like to put a water fountain on our side of the building. There's only one water fountain in the police department, and that's in the outer lobby. So we're going to put one outside of our training room, and it'll have one with a water sensor. And we'll try and insource that with people inside the village to help us and assist with putting that together. Here you have our budgetary increases for the 5 different tabs we have in the budget. If you can just take a quick look at that. As I said before, most of this is based on salary increases that are obligated through collective bargaining units, for an overall increase of 6.4% to our budget. I know it's a very fast and big overview, but you have a lot of people to listen to, so I wanted to make it quick. We have roughly about 450 line items in our budget, so like I said, this is a very brief overview. Any questions?
Trustee Patrick?
Thank you. Chief, thank you for being here. Do we get any state funding for state mandated training?
No.
No.
No, we used to get reimbursed anytime we sent an officer to the academy through the Illinois Training and Standards Board, but that fell by the wayside with a lack of funding. We used to get fines and fees from tickets and arrests that we'd get back from the county, but with legislation that took place less than 2 years ago, a judge can now assign any fine or fee for any ticket or arrest, and that's had a shortfall budgetarily for that group.
And just two more really quick. Could you explain what the Cellbrite license is, and then also the flock cameras and what they do and why they're important?
Absolutely. The Cellbrite license, as I said before, we sent the detective for training. And what it allows us to do in any investigation to take the phone of an offender or a victim and go ahead and download all the data from that phone, which is essential in every investigation. The state's attorney, that's one of the first things they'll ask for now, is did you do a phone dump on any of the people involved in this particular incident? So that's first and foremost. That cell license is an annual license we'd have to have, and it's just under $9,000. But like I said, it is essential. It is a huge time saver if we were to have that license in-house as opposed to sending a detective or two to drive out to the county with every cell phone. And as I said, it's essential in every incident. So you can imagine the amount of cell phone dumps that we're doing.
What are we doing currently?
We have the license with the training for 1 year. And then in this upcoming budget, we're requesting the license for this year and then the subsequent years after that.
Okay.
But in previous practice, as I said, we'd be forced to go to another police department and have them do it for us.
And then if you could explain the flock cameras.
Absolutely. We currently have 5 flock cameras that's situated around town. Many other police departments also have flock cameras. And what it does is it'll read the license plate as well as look at the make and model of the vehicle. And you can put that information into a computer database. And this is happening countrywide. So Big Brother is watching, but it is essential in keeping crime down and looking for violent offenders. And we are seeing almost daily stolen vehicles and catalytic converter thefts and other violent crime that is driving through our town as well as other towns. And the flock hit will happen, and we can get a notice on our cell phones or in the in-car computer, which will then alert us when that person has gone past that camera, and we can go immediately to that location to try and find that vehicle.
So those essentially cut down response times and could potentially close a case sooner rather than later.
That is the hope.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Kozak?
What are your top couple of priorities in this budget?
Well, in this budget, it's definitely building maintenance. The building is was built in 2004. It definitely needs some upgrades, and so we're definitely going to be requesting those, painting, rugs, things like that, just to upgrade. There's been some flooding that had been in the basement, and that happened recently, is about a month and a half ago. So we're going to try and find the rudimentary cause of that as well. 2 squad cars, just to keep our fleet operations up and running and current. The Cellbrite license is essential. The flock cameras, as I stated before, are worth their weight in gold and help our department as well as every other department. And I should add, we can also tap into all the other flock cameras who have them in other police departments in this state and other states. So if we're looking for a particular plate or a particular vehicle, we can be alerted if it should happen in, let's say, in Alabama, in Florida, and we're looking for a vehicle. So that's how big and far-reaching that program and camera is.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Trustee Kumar?
I see that you have a water fountain in here. I am assuming this will be one that will fill water bottles as well.
Yes, as I stated. Because currently, our practice is we have to go into our basement where the water filtration system was put in after the building was built. And so we fill up 5-gallon jugs and put them in a water cooler, basically, in every room in the building. This would alleviate some of that burden.
Personnel-wise, right now, in the future, how many do you think you need to expand?
We would love to get to 39. If we can get to 39, I think we'd be doing a much more effective job. We currently have 1 TAC officer, and he does an unbelievable job of anticipating where problems are going to arise, and he usually seems to be in the right place at the right time. I'd like to have a partner in the car for his safety, because he's messing with a lot of bad hombres in this day and age. So Like I said, we're not requesting that in this budget, but then for it to be considered by the board in future budgets.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And usually we do 3 vehicles, but we are in the process of purchasing essentially a 4th vehicle this year because one was wrecked. So they're still keeping up. And now our assistant village manager is going to do administration and public affairs, and you might consider taking a break after that if you want, but it's up to you. Go ahead, Suzanne.
All right. So I'm going to be very quick. These 3 budgets are, out of the 24 million that is the general fund, a very small piece. So we'll run through it. I think what will be of interest, obviously, is going to be our IT and sort of our proposed software, as well as some of the commission budgets. So generally, we're looking at public affairs, the village manager's office, and information technology. So within public affairs, that's really sort of the elected officials' salaries, our general village memberships, commissions, legal services, the sales tax rebates, so that's the incentives that we provide within our development agreements, and then employee appreciation. Within the village manager's office, that covers the village manager, the assistant village manager, our executive assistant, and our communications specialist. So that's all within the village manager's budget. And then information technology is really our software annual service agreements, renewals, equipment maintenance, and then our information technology manager. So that's the 3 that we're looking at today. Public affairs, there isn't a lot of significant increases planned for 2023. As the village manager indicated earlier, we have given the commissions until November 14th to submit any proposed changes. Right now, we have 3 that have asked for, some adjustments. The Fund Commission, they would just kind of like to reallocate their funding. They only get about $3,500. They want to do a couple new events. They did the Kites and Kicks this summer. They want to continue that for next year and then have a fall fest event that would kind of include food trucks, entertainment, and just, some general event in the fall. But they're proposing to stay within that same $3,500. They also have looked at increasing sponsorships and some other activities within sort of their commission for the upcoming year. Planning and zoning, they right now I think are at 8,000, and they're looking to increase to 10,000. Primarily, that's the cost associated with the public hearing transcripts and supplies. And then the Fire and Police Commission, I think they're going to increase about 2,000, and that's really about legal representation and applicant testing. So just some small increases there. The big things that we're looking to do, as the village manager already talked about, is our website redesign. So we haven't had one in several years. It's actually built into our contract. So our biggest priorities with that are, to improve our ADA. We have a number of things that need to be addressed to make it an accessible website, to make it easier. We talk about 1 to 2 clicks, right? So that you're able to find what you're looking for. This year, we're going to implement some of our ADA changes that need to happen, as well as what we call a chat bot that, as you ask questions, it's going to be able to pull up answers, right? So if you want to say, what day is garbage day, it'll automatically find that for you on our website, and that will help inform our website redesign. We'll be able to know what people are coming to our website for. So we'll take that data and lead with that for our website redesign. So we're looking forward to that. And then strategic planning, as previously mentioned, was in the budget this year, but we'll probably do something more extensive next year. The village manager's office, really no changes. The biggest thing is my position, which was previously the human resource manager, was in the finance office. And so that's going to move over to the village manager's budget. So you'll see an increase there, but it's going to even out because it'll be removed from finance. So it's simply just putting it where it should be with the changes in staffing. And the biggest changes are within information technology. So we're going to increase that about 22% for 2023. But there's a number of reasons. So part of that is our move this year to Microsoft Office 365. We also are consolidating all of our software costs from other departments into the IT budget so that if you want to know what we're doing with IT, it's all very easily accessible within one budget and not sort of filtered out throughout many different departments. The other thing is we had kind of talked about earlier and throughout all the different departments is our investment in software technologies to improve our efficiencies. So we're looking at customer relationship management software, financial management software, enterprise resource. So that is kind of taking all of this, accounting, community development, permitting, utilities, and getting one software that can talk to, be integrated. Right now, everything is very piecemeal. So, utilities doesn't talk to permitting. There's no sort of integration and it makes it a little more inefficient. So we're looking at how we can improve that. We also don't have a good human resource management software. We don't have automated time and attendance. Everything is paper-based. And for an organization our size, that is very inefficient. So we're looking to improve that. And we're also looking at just updating our agenda and FOIA software because there's some improvements that can be made as well as some cost savings on that as well. And I also just want to say within administration that's not mentioned here, one of the things that we look at when we're talking about staffing is how we can reduce our costs. Every year, we're going to see increased salaries, increased costs and benefits, pensions, liabilities on that end. And so when we talk about bringing on new staff, you also have to look at, that's going to cost an additional, anywhere 30 to 50% in labor costs. So you have your salary and then you have everything else, right? Your payroll taxes, training, their retirement benefits, health insurance, all of those costs, typically round out about 40% more than what just the salary is. So we kind of, we've been fortunate that we've been able to kind of look at ways to decrease our benefits. This year we're fortunate to have a slight decrease, in that cost because that's always increasing. And so that's one of the things that while it's not necessarily tangible, we are constantly looking at ways that we can bring those costs down so we can address some of the staffing needs within all of our departments that, we know is there as well. So that's it. Any questions?
No, it's great that you're consolidating things in the departments like that. That makes a lot more sense than doing a piecemeal.
Slight increase at Suzanne's, she was one of the main supporters of it for employee recognition, and it's in there, but it's only about $5,000 or something. But I think it's one of those things where she was talking about all those costs for the benefits, and those are important. And we are trying to hold those costs down, but without reducing benefits. So one of the things we can do on another thing is just to recognize the excellent work that some of our employees do, and that's hopefully a less expensive investment in the purpose of the work that we do, which is so important.
Yeah, so we've never had a formalized employee recognition program. And I think part of that is also looking at training, which Manager Harline has prioritized, is really allowing people to grow within their positions. So while you might not have upward mobility, you can improve retention by giving people, the ability to grow within their positions. So focusing on that as well as, recognizing our employees and all the work that they've done and formalizing that and providing opportunities to kind of celebrate, all the work that we do within this community.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Trustee Kozar.
What do you see as your top priority or a couple priorities?
So definitely our technology improvements. When you look at, our inefficiencies, and I think everyone behind me will agree, having sort of these softwares that don't talk to each other, having softwares that, aren't performing as we need them to, or were designed, probably on a budget, they're just not helping us move forward. And so being able to kind of have these things that are integrated across all of our different departments, that would be huge. Obviously, for me, employee retention talking about our fire department, right? That's a national problem, is that you're not seeing people go into, the first responder service on the police and fire side. And so we're seeing burnout of those employees. And so how do we address that on, the human resource administration side? And so kind of looking at those recruitment efforts, it's certainly, salary based, right? Though that is a concern, is how are we competitive with our surrounding communities? But that's only a part of it. There's just a lack of people, coming to the table. And that is also an issue across the field as well from a recruitment standpoint. Yeah.
Thank you.
Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Just a couple of questions for you. Could you just explain some of the examples that you would do for employee recognition?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different things. I think one of the things that we talked about was, having a more formal, whether it's a dinner or lunch, giving out service awards, sort of that formalized employee recognition program. This last summer, we did a cookout that was just a very relaxed setting where we, all the department heads, grilled and provided food for the employees, and they really appreciated that. And kind of taking those opportunities. So last year we did, had a week-long activities for public service appreciation week. So we kind of chose that as our week to really just kind of do small things. So I did a lot of small things throughout the week that people kind of appreciated. So I think that's part of it, right? Those traditional appreciation things. But I also think, being able to provide additional benefits where that's possible. We have an employee survey that we haven't put out yet, but I think that will also help inform the things. I think we're, slowly focusing on improving our overall culture and addressing a lot of things that, employees have had concerns about. And that will all, drive, employee appreciation and how people feel and increasing morale within the village.
I think it's a really good idea to focus on recognizing our employees, especially with employee retention being such a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is 5,000 enough? Can we do more? We know the costs involved with losing employees, and what I'm saying is that if it takes a little bit more than that, let's know about that.
Yeah,
Is
I think
5,000 enough?
we can talk about it.
I think we can figure out ways to
Yeah.
spend. I don't mean to spend more money. I think that Suzanne would love to have. Me too, but I mean, she has a lot. When you said, "Do you have any ideas?" She has 100 ideas. So we would, if that's a priority, we can put more money into it. But
Well, for me, I think it should be a priority, especially talking about creating a culture here, especially within our staff. People like going to work and being appreciated and acknowledged for doing a job well done.
Yeah.
So if we can spend a little bit more than that, or even hear some of more of your ideas,
Yeah.
I think that's great, and that maybe 5,000 is a little low on that.
And I think employee appreciation is only part of it, right? I think the other big focus, is training and building people up and giving them the autonomy within their position. So that's not something we've focused on before, right? So certainly I can go to training, our police officers or firefighters, they go to training, but our frontline staff, our utility staff, right, we're not giving them a lot of opportunities outside what might be required of their position. And so I think that also builds sort of a connection to your employer when you're able to really continue to grow. And so I think that's also a focus, why it's not technically employee appreciation. It also is just really focusing on employee development and satisfaction within their roles.
Yeah, I would absolutely like to see the development of an employee recognition program that is maintained and followed through throughout
Yeah,
the years. So,
certainly.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Trustee Kumar.
You talked mainly, I'm going to go back to IT, and I'm absolutely for an employee recognition program in any way or form as well. But IT-wise, what have you guys looked at as consolidated software that would go across the board a little bit and bundle many of these things together? Because the bundling process will probably allow for some cost savings also. It's not completely, it takes money to get everything on the same page as well.
It does. And I certainly don't want to speak as an expert because the software includes a lot of different things. When we look at the enterprise resource planning, so we've looked, I think, at Tyler and we've looked at BSNA, which are kind of the big ones for local government ERP softwares. So that would include, that's got human resource management software, it's got utilities, it's got the permitting and community development aspects, it's got accounting software. So, that would take the place of what we're currently paying for separately. So it's not cost neutral, right? Especially because we don't have an HR software in some of the functions that these have, but we're kind of looking at those ways that can kind of talk to each other, payroll, all of that flows in. So right now, all of that is separate.
Yeah, there's going to be some efficiency savings in general that will come out in the long run. Maybe not in the short run. It'll be short run, expensive, long run, worth it.
If you watch our administrative assistants do payroll, I mean, they literally do it all paper based. Especially like within Public Works and in the fire department. I mean, they literally are figuring this out, and it's 2 days when we can have like a software that will just do it for them, and just make it so much more efficient and, help them do that better. Yes, because she's done parks and fire.
One other question along that line. So when you're looking at software, is there the ability to test different types in a real short run kind of way? Or do you have to kind of choose based on?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've done demos. And we also, fortunately, our IT manager has very strong relationships within the IT local government community. So we get a lot of feedback, from them as well. But I think they typically don't, you're not going to have like a trial run of a software, but they do kind of let you play around if you ask on the demo end.
Oh, okay. Okay. Like, is there like a 30-day, this is awful, this doesn't work at all kind of thing is what I'm asking.
Tailored to your community.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
There is like when you look at an ERP software, you're talking an 18, to 2-year implementation when you're talking about all the different components. So it very much is built to what, you
it's
need.
Built to specification. Okay.
You have to load your entire GL into there.
No.
And then run a test, and yeah.
I mean, there's always a learning curve, and there are problems with software that come up, right? That as much as possible, you want to alleviate the cost of that.
Yes.
What are you looking at the cost of a system like that?
I don't know that I want to say. So all in, I think a couple that we looked at were around like 200, but that's with the implementation fees, So it kind of just depends. It depends on all the different pieces that you're going to add to it. But then it takes the place, we're probably spending about $100,000 in costs associated with our various softwares, right? So there is some.
Yeah, and your efficiencies will pay for that over time.
Yes.
And your aggravation and all that, sure.
And also aggravated people who work with this, because this is also for things like permits and stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's all gonna just tie in together.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing. Our finance supervisor sat in on a demo, and one of the great things is if somebody calls and needs a water shut off or, something to that, she can make that appointment right there, right? And then that goes to the department that needs to know it. Right now, that's probably a huge process. Instead of being just automated in the system. Just a very simple thing like that saves everybody time. It improves communication.
Yeah. And it helps dealing with residents.
Yes.
Makes them happy. So.
Gives them a better experience.
Okay, anything else? Good. Well, thank you.
Next would be Parks and Rec. Do you want to take a break now, or do you want to keep on?
I say keep going.
Keep going, all right.
We're moving along pretty well.
It's 8:30.
Greg, you're up.
It starts Wednesday, right? The eclipse is 8:30?
Process things, it won't be till early in the morning, though. About 3, 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy birthday, by the way.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's a privilege to be here to present to you guys. Thanks to Manager Hardline for giving us this opportunity, and I also want to thank my division heads, Gina Racanelli and Matt Frieri and Brian Roche for putting the presentation together. Yolanda did all the work, so thanks to Yolanda as well. And they're all the meat and potatoes of our budget, so kudos to them. So I'm just going to run through my slides and summarize what we've done is kind of give everybody a background of each division, what they do, some of their accomplishments for 2022, and then what we're looking to do in 2023. So on fleet services, that's Matt's division. Fleet services over 155 vehicles and pieces of equipment. We have 3 full-time mechanics, and just a quick breakdown of the vehicles for each department. They take care of 11 fire department vehicles, 32 police department vehicles, 3 rec vehicles, 11 parks vehicles, which includes the gator and mowers and small equipment, 3 fleet service vehicles, and 59 public works vehicles. So for 2022, Matt's crew, they usually do all the setup for the new police cars. Several years ago, we used to contract that out, and it would take 2 months to get a vehicle back, 2 to 3 months. And one instance, they got the car back, and within a week, none of the sirens or lights were working, so they had to troubleshoot, and which was even worse than doing it themselves. So they had to basically tear the parts apart, the car apart, to find out what was the problem. It turned out that the ground wasn't attached. So Matt wanted to do all the install himself, because then they're pretty sure that they would do it in a correct fashion. And if you've ever seen what they do to the police cars, they gut those cars. It's pretty labor intensive. They strip the whole inside of the cars and rewire everything for all the lights, and then put the cages in, those type of things. But in doing that, they're basically assured that they're going to do the right job. So anyway, so they've this past year they took and set up 4 new police cars. We do have 1 new police car, and the new fire chief's car set up pending. We take the old used vehicles, if you remember. You know, sometimes we sell them on some of them that aren't usable, we sell them in the auction for over and off, and some of them that are in decent shape, we repurpose them through some of the other departments, and so Matt's crew does that. We had a large snowplow truck that had major repairs. We do the 3 large dump plow trucks had dump body frame rails rust out, so that was a big undertaking to get those rails back into shape. Matt usually budgets for 80,000 gallons of fuel, and so 2022 the cost was about $3 a gallon, and you all know that the gas prices skyrocketed, and so they kind of shot our budget a little bit. However, our use of gas was a little down, so I think we're close to being in budget anyway, but gas prices kind of curtailed the trying to stay as within budget as we can. Now we do have the 10,000 gallon in-ground storage tank, gasoline tank, and a 4,000 gallon in-ground diesel tank, and we approached Manager Hardline a while ago because the gas prices when we order was over the $20,000 limit that was placed on the manager. So if you remember, a few months ago, the board approved the Manager Hardline's ability to sign off on a little higher, and that was basically because of the fuel. And we had to order in bulk. We can't order weekly, you know, it's usually a bi-monthly process when the fuel gets low. So the price of gas kind of made us be a little more flexible. And again, thank you to the board for agreeing to up the manager's ability to sign off, because that was one of the issues that we had with the rising prices. And I'll touch upon it a little later. Same holds true for the vehicles. And we'll touch upon that in a minute. But anyway, the record high prices for gas was $4.25 per gallon. This is our cost, and diesel was up $5.11 per gallon. So hopefully those prices will come down in 2023. But we'll see. And just to touch upon one of the notes I made is with Fleet and our Parks Department, we're the support division for the entire village. So it's a little challenging, but I think our guys work really well with all the other departments, and we certainly enjoy providing good service to those departments to make their lives a little easier. So our upcoming budget impact items for 2023. So again, we touched upon gas and the oil prices. It's 40% increase since December 2021. We touched a little bit about the budgeting of future vehicles. For instance, we budgeted this year for a Parks truck, and the source well that Parks and Public Works uses, it's a cooperative program. We get the cooperative pricing on the vehicles. We didn't get that information until September on the prices, and we're not going to be able to order a truck in September and get it by the end of the year. So we've pushed that off. We've had we asked Manager Harline to sign the PO for a truck so we can get it ordered and then hopefully delivered by 2023. So that's one of the budgetary concerns that we have, is how are we going to be able to order things a year or a few months out before the budget's even approved. So, but that's a concern because the timing to get a vehicle, it's not going to be 2 months, 3 months. It could be 15 months. So that's a major concern of ours. And Matt has, with previous administrations, he's put together a vehicle replacement program. We have an aging fleet. We've done a lot better at replacing a lot of vehicles, but there's still a lot of, mainly some of the Public Works trucks, the bigger trucks are going to be in need of replacement in the future. So we're starting to plan for that already. We're going to have to set up the 3 new police cars for next year. That includes the lights and sirens. And again, I mentioned that it's a really labor-intensive process to strip those cars out, wire them up, and then put everything back in. But again, Matt's crew would rather have it that way than contracting out, waiting for 2 or 3 months, and then when something goes wrong, we don't know. We'd have to troubleshoot and tear the whole car apart anyway. So we'd rather do that. So along with the 3 new police cars, we have a new fire truck that's on order and expected in fall of 2023. Again, they'll have to install the radios and accessories. And then again, I did touch upon the dump truck for the parks and a pickup truck with a plow for Public Works that we wanted to get this year in this 2022 budget. But with the Sourcewell Cooperative, which is normally how we purchase those vehicles, we got that information in September, and so there's no way we were going to get those trucks in 2022. So we put it off to 2023, and we think that's going to be the sign of the future of how we're going to have to buy the vehicles. It depends on when the cooperative purchase. Hopefully, they'll come out sooner, and we'll be able to sign a PO and put the order in, and hopefully get those vehicles within that budget year. So we'll have to keep you abreast on that. For our recreation division, that's headed up by Gina Racanelli. We have 4 full-time rec staff and 2 full-time office personnel. We also have 2 full-time custodians that work out of the community center. Those custodians report to the Parks Division, but they work out of the community center. So there's eight full-timers, plus myself, so I guess that would be 9, out of the Recreation Division. We program over 1,500 programs annually. We've sold 760 memberships at Jefferson Pool and fitness classes. 1,384 households register for programs and memberships annually. Throughout the year, we offer 40 special seasonal events, and 25 to 30% are free to the public. I mentioned at 30% because staff they count the concerts as one special event, even though there's 9 concerts. There was 9 last year. There's going to be 8 this year. Our super sensational Saturday morning free events, we do 2 of them. We count that as one special event. So, but anyway, the 25% are free to the public. On average, we have over 7,000 people attend our events annually. For Jefferson Pool, we employ an average of 15 seasonal staff. This year was a little outlier. Staffing was a challenge. If you've read the Daily Herald, there's a lot of area park districts. Aurora, the one comes to mind, didn't even open one of their pools because they didn't have enough staff. Our staffing was down a little bit. We like 30 lifeguards. I think we had 21 or 22 lifeguards, so it was down. So that means that the staffing and the folks that are lifeguarding work more hours. Nothing crazy, but they do work more, and so we're going to try to get back up to those 30 lifeguards each season. Just make sure that the staff doesn't work like 40 hours or 30 hours a week. We can program and schedule them to work a little less. So Jefferson Pool season is roughly 93 days, which on average we have 85 days which are swimmable if we have a good season. A few years ago, our summer season was really bad. It rained a lot, and I think we had maybe 75 days. So the pool is weather dependent. Usually when we sell our season passes, we pray for really hot weather in May. So that kind of it spurs on the sales of the seasonal passes. But again, it's weather dependent, and it's with the staffing, weather, chlorine, it all plays a factor in offering the service to the community. It is a good service to the residents, and if we have a real good warm summer, we will make some money, but typically we don't make enough money to support out of the revenues for sales of passes and daily sales. We need a good warm summer to break even, basically. Our Mariner swim team averages roughly 110 swimmers annually. It's a great program. It's usually families that have their kids swim, and then once the kids grow, if they live in the community, they have their children swim. And I've seen the program grow where we were always in the division that wasn't as accomplished, and now we're moving up in divisions because of the good coaches that we've hired and the dedication of the swimmers. So the program is becoming more successful in terms of winning conference meets and that sort of thing. But that just kind of is a nice feeder program for the Willowbrook High School swim team. Our Learn to Swim staff are trained and certified internally, and we have a 90% success rate. One of our recreation staff did complete her training, so now she trains our pool staff. So the upcoming budget impact items for 2023 in the Recreation Division, we're going to purchase, replace the fun umbrellas. Some of them have shown wear and tear. We're going to raise the minimum pay, if approved, for seasonal staff to $15 an hour. One of the things for trying to attract staff is the competitive hourly rate. And we think if we raise our fees or our hourly rate a little bit, we'll be able to attract that staff as opposed to having them going to Lombard or neighboring communities. We want to keep our kids here. Again, with the raising of the staff, the minimum wage will be up to $13 per hour, so we'll be a couple bucks above the minimum wage. Some of the other Recreation Division impacts on the budget, a few years ago with COVID, we did not send out the brochures. We didn't print them. We didn't send them out through the mail. It saved us roughly $10,000. And we found that people were registering via email, and they were getting all their information on the website. And so instead of sending the brochures out and printing all the brochures for each household, we'll print 300 or so to keep them on hand. We'll send them to the seniors that don't have access to computers or not computer literate like me. I'm not computer literate, but we'll print some of the brochures out and we'll send them out. But we'll also send postcards out to everybody saying, look out for the next season's brochure. That's coming up. And then as far as capital expenditures, we're going to hold off on from the recreation end of things because of the pending community center. The Recreation Division on the pool side of things does work with our Parks Division on all the stuff that needs to be done at Jefferson Pool. So they work hand in hand together. Last 2022, we replaced the roping around the pool. We replaced we replaced the landscaping. So we did a lot of work internally with that. And then on the Parks Division, I'll touch upon this, but there's some big ticket items that we have to. The pool is getting old. Concrete is wearing out on the shell. And so there's some items that we're going to address in the Parks Division for the future of Jefferson. And under the Parks, Buildings, and Grounds, so we have 8 full-time staff that work out of the Parks Division. There are also 4 seasonal staff. It's usually college kids that maintain the ball fields for us and do some work during the weekends. That saves us time and a half. We used to just have full-timers come out on the weekends, and that would cost time and a half. So now we have college kids that take care of those weekend hours, and it just saves the village a little bit of money. The division maintains 125 total acres. 100 acres are at 15 park sites, which includes the Prairie Path and Great Western Trail. 25 acres of other village space includes village buildings, pumping stations, well houses, dead ends, right-of-ways, North Avenue medians, drainage areas. The Parks Division maintains all that. They also maintain 10 playgrounds and 5 baseball and softball fields. For the village facilities, there's 35 facilities that the Parks Division maintains, and that includes the rec centers, the administrative buildings, the maintenance buildings, police and fire facilities, lift stations, pressure stations, well houses, salt and storage facility, and the metro station. So on just a recap of 2022, some of the things that the Parks Division completed for the police department. I think Chief Rivas talked about some of the flooding that they've had. So we replaced ejection pumps. The fire system was replaced, and we've had new HVAC system controls installed. More on the HVAC system later. The fleet department, we installed a new shed over the oil containment unit, storage unit. Village Hall, we repaired and replaced the main sewer line. The Parks Department, this year we had the party trailer that we rented, and that was a huge success. Let me see, I had those numbers, bear with me. So on a new party trailer, we had rented it 17 out of the 21 weekends that we had it, which was huge. And of course, it's only one, if somebody's having a block party, we can only run out to one block party. So we have 10 tables, 100 chairs, music, a grill, the barricades. I'm forgetting something. But anyway, it was a highly successful, and we look for full season this next year. Let's see. Oh, we also replaced, relocated the irrigation at the High Ridge baseball field. We worked with Villa Park Youth Baseball to move some of the base paths. Originally was for the bases were 90 feet for the older kids. They wanted us to move the base pegs in a little for the younger kids. So we did that, no problem. We have a good working relationship with Villa Park Youth Baseball. And that's going to be one of our major fields to use throughout the year. It's still in its infancy. It's 2 years old. Grass is still taking shape, getting strong. But we're excited to get continual use out of that. Mentioned the Jefferson Pool. We had a new landscaping and deck ropes. We painted the baby pool, renovated the main filter room. Again, we had some concrete spalling and concrete issues with Jefferson. We had a concrete company come in and replace, I guess it's hydraulic concrete. There were some holes that we had to fix during the season. It's pretty tough to do with when the pool is full of water, but it was a small enough section that we were able to do that. When we drained the pool, we found other areas of concrete that were in bad shape. So we dug those areas out and we repaired those. But that just want to point that out because I think we're budgeting for a liner. If not this year, we're going to need one next year, and it'll buy us another 8 years or so for the pool. And then we'll be able to plan ahead for if we want to build a new facility. But the bathhouse is in good shape. We did a lot of renovation on the bathhouse, plumbing, new roof a few years ago. So the bathhouse, new windows, bathhouse is in pretty decent shape. We tuck pointing, we did. So the bathhouse is good. Just the pool shell and the infrastructure that we have to keep an eye on. But that being said, the concrete replacement was a success. We've used the epoxy paint. We started using that a few years ago, which, well, the little cracks, it kind of saved water loss. So we'll continue to use that epoxy paint and also lasts longer. We had probably 40 years of layers of paint that weren't removed. You know, they'd scrape some of the paint chips off. When we removed that 40 years, it was like the size of a VW bus. There was a lot of paint. So we removed it all the way down to the concrete, and then we painted with epoxy paint, which helped out and helped with water retention. But again, we're going to evaluate some of the areas. Several years ago, the board committed $50,000 to the pools, which we use for any major items, the heating elements, pumps, those type of things. So we have that in store if we need to replace some big ticket items. And the other thing is NESDRA, the special recreation. We do the playground mulch every year. And on my last page, so our upcoming projects, we're going to demo the community rec building. The construction of the new Lions Park facility will take place. We'll go to bid in the springtime, and construction, breaking ground will probably be late spring. We also have another big project, the OSLAG grant for Lufkin Park. We did finally got the grant agreement back in, I think it was either very late September, early October. President Cazone signed the grant agreement for the IDNR, and that was in October. So we were supposed to do that OSLAG grant. We were supposed to start this year, but because of the lack or the IDNR's lack of staffing, that was all pushed back. So there was a 2-year project, 2022 and 2023. We look to finish that whole project next year, 2023. We'd like to do facility evaluations of all 11 buildings within our little area here, the campus. I'm a big proponent of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Some of those big ticket items, we always put them on hold until they become an emergency, and then we have to replace them. As an example, several years ago, we put in for the replacement of the boiler in this room or in this building, Village Hall, and we just didn't have the money, and then finally the boiler went out, so it was an emergency and we had to replace it. We don't want to do that, and we want to be proactive and get a facility assessment done on a lot of these facilities. The police department, their HVAC system is done. We need to replace that HVAC system this summer, or spring for that matter. We want to avoid those we need to do it right away. We want to plan for the future and get facility assessments on several of the buildings, so we're ready to go and we can plan on what we're going to do each year. Again, I mentioned Jefferson Pool, the improvements, so we're looking to do a new liner, if not this year, definitely next year. If we do the new liner, it would probably be, if it was this year, or excuse me, in 2023 budget, it would probably be at the end of the pool season. There's no way we could do that in the spring and get it up and running and ready to go for the summer season. And then the other final thing I want to mention is Metro. Metro, we've done some cooperative maintenance. Staffing, we've had, I think it's 18 landscape beds on Ardmore Avenue when they did the new streetscape. We also had the Metro Station landscaping, and we've contracted with area landscapers to provide that service. It saves us time. They do a very nice job. We've had a lot of compliments on the maintenance of that, and one of the worries that we don't have to worry about, and contractual service takes care of that. So with that, I thank you for your time. Sorry if it was long-winded, but we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Greg. You mentioned High Ridge, that the drainage was redone there. Has that helped with the last few rains we've had there?
Yeah, I haven't
there was a
heard any complaints. We ran some drainage tiles out into the off the field, so that's helped. We've also redone some irrigation, moved some irrigation around because we do irrigate the grass out there to make it a little better, eliminate the chance that knotweed is going to grow and have better grass. So it's helped.
Cool. Thank you. Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Just a few questions for you. One for fleet services. Quick question. Do we void any vehicle warranties when we retrofit our own squad cars?
I'd have to ask Matt on that. I don't think we do, because we're just pulling out the seats and just attaching sirens, all the lights. We're not messing with the engine. I don't believe we are. We'll double check on that, Trustee Patrick. But
thank you. And then moving back into recreation here. Years back, the village used to host Oktoberfest, mostly geared around kids, small carnival, activities like that. And since we went away with that, it was kind of replaced by Beer Fest, more of an adult activity here. has the village considered at all bringing back Oktoberfest so that way children have an opportunity to partake in some events during?
Well, what we did was we stopped doing Oktoberfest and we started Summerfest. In Summerfest, we had a Summerfest commission, and so that was a while back, so there was a family event. We had two family events, one in the fall, Oktoberfest, and then the Summerfest. And Oktoberfest, actually, the carnival was geared for the kids, but we also had, one of the major costs was the entertainment. We had, Heaven 17, Seventh Heaven, that was $5,000-$6,000. Whether it rained or shined, we'd have to pay them.
All I'm asking is, has the village considered bringing that back? Because, again, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that we've had Summerfest and Oktoberfest run simultaneously in previous years.
Yeah, right. It wasn't, I'm sorry if I misspoke. It wasn't it didn't replace, Summerfest was here with Oktoberfest, but Oktoberfest was, at the time, we were losing a lot of money on Oktoberfest, so that was the reason that we stopped doing it.
I think the Fun Commission is looking to do a new fall event. I don't know if that is anything on the scale that you had in mind for Oktoberfest, but I'm just
saying that, Beer Fest is great,
Yeah.
a good event.
Right.
However, I think it also took away from a lot of the families and kids that wanted to partake in events during that time as well. And if the Community Fun Commission is planning on doing something for that, I think that's great. But you talk.
That doesn't mean we can't help support them if you have something bigger in mind.
And if I may, it was a rather large event, but I've got 40 special events, family special events that we run.
Which ones are those?
Fishing Derby, the Fishing Clinic, Super Sensational Saturdays, Big Rigs and Kids, Movies in the Park, Picture Book Picnic, 4th of July in a Box, that's not really the whole family, Scarecrow Decorating, Halloween Happenings, the Ice Fishing Derby, Cupid
Those large
Surprise.
events, though?
Pardon?
Those aren't large events.
No, they're one-day events, yeah.
Okay. And then you talked about, we had a Summerfest committee.
Correct.
Or a commission. I believe
Yeah.
it was previously the Fun Commission, which was the Community Pride Commission at that time.
No, that was a separate commission. There were two separate
There was a
commissions.
separate commission.
Yeah.
Are we planning on moving forward with Summerfest again? And if so, do we have a committee for that established?
We had a Summerfest commission or committee that the third year after I got here, it was basically the same folks, and we tried to recruit new people, and the same folks that were on the commission or committee, and they would recruit their friends, and people would move in and out, and they were just the same people, the Gatzes, and that were instrumental in donating their time. They had had enough. They just served their time basically, and they didn't want to do it anymore. So, and there was nobody to fill the void.
What's
So
our
staff.
plan this year?
Pardon?
What's our plan this year?
Well, we're doing Summerfest. We've done a one-day Summerfest. We did a one-day last year. We'll do another one-day Summerfest this year.
Okay, do we have a committee established?
We don't have a committee. It's just staff.
It's staff.
Right.
Do you think there's an interest in more public participating and helping plan that event? I mean, I'm not opposed. I don't think we're opposed to getting volunteers
I think
to help
Summerfest
out.
is I think it's an essential part of Villa Park in the summer for families to get together.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the last maybe 3-4 years, a couple of them have been rained out due to weather. And I don't know if we had any alternate date plans for weather or anything like that, but absolutely, that event can be improved upon as far as attendance goes, possibly different types of entertainment, more types of vendors. It absolutely has a lot of potential. So I do think that if we could create a committee of some sort, and that would also alleviate some of the pressure on staff having to deal solely with those responsibilities. But yeah, definitely, Summerfest should, I think we have a lot of potential there as well.
Yeah, we did. Well, we haven't eliminated Summerfest. Last year was the first year we did one day instead of the two, And you're right, because we did Friday and Saturdays, and typically one of those days we would get rained out. And we've looked at changing dates. It's, you know, it's kind of
It's hard to do with an event that size.
well, that, and, you know, we could change it, and the date we change it to might be rainy, and the date we had previous might be sunny. So that's kind of a tough call.
And then moving along to our pools. You talked about how there's a shortage locally of lifeguards to staff, and that you used an example as Aurora closing down one of their pools just because they didn't have staffing. So you're proposing to pay our lifeguards $13, or they're currently being paid $13 an hour, and you want to up that to $15 an hour.
Correct.
What about our pool manager or pool managers? Are they planning on getting a pay increase?
Yeah, I don't have the figures in front of me, but we don't want to compress the salaries. That holds true for like the front desk staff that's collecting the money. The lifeguards have more training to do, so their salaries should be a little bit higher than the folks that are collecting
The
at
pool
the front.
manager is responsible for the lifeguards, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think there should be a focus on that position as well as making a little bit more incentive, so that way we have capable and responsible people that are responsible for our lifeguards.
We're on the same page. That's we do want to offer our pool managers a competitive salary, because that's one of the most important part-time jobs in the village.
Sure, absolutely. And then as far as patrons that attend to the pool, we have got a lot of camp kids and different camp areas. How are those groups, are those organizations paying a daily rate? How does that work?
Yeah, they do pay us to use the pool. We have our own camp that goes every day. That's part of their registration fees for our own camps. And then other camps that want to come, we'll charge them a daily rate. I have to find out if we give them any kind of price break. I don't know. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
But we do charge them a daily rate.
Okay. And then, and lastly, you said that a majority of our Villa Park Youth Baseball League games are going to be held at the High Ridge Park baseball field. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, I thought you said...
Not a majority. We'll still use Lions Park. They still use Jefferson. We just want to get more more play over there.
With the development of the recreation center coming up, how is that going to affect Villa Park Youth Baseball moving forward?
Well, we're going to try to utilize one of the fields. I don't know with the construction site if that's going to be feasible or not, but we're already looking at Franklin Park, Twin Lakes.
Do we have parking that could accommodate those types of, if you've ever been to Villa Park Youth Baseball games, there's a lot of activity. I know, at least on High Ridge, I think a lot of our people, a lot of the people would have to park at Willowbrook. The other field that you were talking about that is just, what is that? Off
Twin
of
Lakes?
Elm? Not Twin Lakes.
Franklin Park?
Franklin
Yeah.
Park.
It's more of a
That's
neighborhood.
street parking.
Yeah, and that would be for the younger kids,
Okay.
you know, the younger aged group.
Okay.
Over at High Ridge, we also are able to utilize the Islamic Foundation parking.
Okay.
It's right there, right next to the field.
And my last question, probably the easiest, is what's the party trailer? What does that entail?
The party trailer is we have 10 tables, 8-foot tables, I believe. We have 100 chairs. We have a grill. We have a boom box. We have the Bago game, and residents are able to rent that for like $50. We have the barricades. So we pull up on a Friday if they have a block party on a Saturday. We bring the trailer out Friday, park it in the street or in their driveway, and they set up their block party, and it's like a block party in a box.
And can you give me the statistics again about that? You gave some numbers saying that it was a pretty big success this year.
So out of the 21 weekends from June to October, it was rented 17 weekends out of those.
I think in the original, so there have been things that have been cut even before bringing this to you, and I think that a second trailer might have been one of those. So that doesn't mean it can't be added back, but how much
Yeah,
does that cost?
originally we were gonna do 2, but we didn't know how successful it was gonna be, so.
That's kind of where I was going with that as well. Do you think a second trailer would be beneficial, or we could rent it out as many times as we did this first trailer?
I think it'll just grow.
What do you think an estimated cost for a fully outfitted party trailer would cost?
I wish I had that number because I
think it was like somewhere between, I was going to say like 13,000, 10.
It might be in the 13. I was going to say 10, 11, but it might be in the 13,000 to outfit everything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I
It's
was
now
at a couple
summer
of block
festival.
parties where they had those, and they were really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice setup.
We can no longer use the term Summerfest. It has to be Summer Festival.
That's right.
Oh, correct. Sorry about that. It's
The Summer Festival, the people in Milwaukee were afraid that we'd ruin
It's a
their
trademark.
events,
So what do we call it now?
Summer Festival.
Villa Park Summerfest 2000 and whatever year.
Okay.
I already
People
cleared it
from
with the guy.
Milwaukee were getting diverted down here.
Yeah,
They were looking at
yeah,
us
right.
like, where's
Right.
Summerfest?
That's right. Yeah, where's the big
This is
band?
Villa Park. Yeah. Run a party trailer.
Trustee Slow.
Keeping in the conversation of High Ridge, there was talk a while back about lighting. on nighttime. Is that still something that's in the future? If it is there a dollar that's going to be applied to that?
Yeah, we have to try to figure out, it's the electric, the infrastructure has been roughed in. It's just getting the lights and the poles and I think running the actual wires. But the conduit and everything is there.
Is that something that's coming relatively soon, or is it years out?
Actually, we've had Musco Lighting, which is a big lighting company from Iowa. They do a lot of the area, Park District fields. They came out, and we're still waiting on a fee or a proposal or cost for what it would cost to. We brought them out for Lions Park, and we also had them go out to High Ridge to see what the fees and charges or proposal would be for High Ridge.
Trustee Kumar.
The pool liner, I'm certainly concerned about the pool. I mean, it's old, it needs, what is the cost of a pool liner and what are we expecting in our budget in the near future?
I believe it costs us about $110,000 to $120,000.
Okay.
What's the life expectancy on that liner?
8 to 10 years. The one at Lovekin, that was about 12 years old, and about 8 years in, it started to become delaminated from the shell. So that's, I think the life expectancy is roughly, you can get 10 years. We got 12, but we were taking the anchors. It delaminated, and we were anchored and into the concrete shell.
Trustee Kozar.
On gas prices, does our municipality have to pay the same taxes? Or are we, like if a gallon of gas is $4,
I'd have to check on the taxes. I don't see the bill.
$2.50, but
Yeah, maybe.
I think we have to pay some of them, but there are some, I believe, that we get excused from.
Yeah.
Typically, yes, there's the federal side we don't pay, but since we don't resell it, we don't have to tack on the there is some federal charges.
Yeah, I think that's why our cost per gallon, averaged out, is a little less expensive.
Okay. So, I mean, in your department, you really have 3 or 4 departments kind of all in one. You got your fleet, your recreation, your parks, and your buildings. Do you have a priority maybe in each one of those that, is important to you, especially in this upcoming budget?
Well, I mean, Matt, like I mentioned before, from Fleet, he has that vehicle replacement program that we really want to start incorporating again. We want to get back about 5-6 years ago when we had to replace these. I mean, the poor public works guys were riding around in trucks that the floorboards were rusted out, and they were taking old sign blanks and putting them in for floorboards and stuff. So it was kind of bad. So it has improved. It's over the last 4 or 5 years we've been able to purchase more vehicles, but I think that for Fleet, it's starting to get back into incorporating a vehicle replacement program. We've been trying for the last few years to get that facility evaluation done because we really want to get a really good evaluation of all these buildings and what's going to be wearing out soon, so we can plan in the future instead of, have an emergency replacement like we did several years ago for the boiler down here. I don't want to operate that way. It's just so this company come in and evaluate the buildings and say, you're going to have to start planning for a replacement of the roof. Fleet department, we know the fleet roof is in need of replacement, and we've been putting that off. We want them to go over the PD, because PD, there's issues like all over the place. Public Works, there was ejector pump issues, and there's a lot of different things that pop up that we kind of, we'll go and manage and try to rectify and correct, but we'd rather have a game plan.
So that evaluation is important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trustee Kumar.
So this whole evaluation, is that going to be part of the comprehensive plan as well? No, that's separate. That's a separate internal
It's the
plan.
evaluation of our facilities to figure what are the priorities, or what, with the possibility of looking towards, if building a new building is a better idea in some places. In addition, there's some money in there to do a structural engineering survey of the
The old chamber building.
yeah, the Ardmore Station, because it's got some foundation issues that were concerned and some other issues. So. But yeah, that's separate from the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Now, the facility plan, is that just on Home Avenue, or is that just going to be, is that going to be for all of our buildings?
There's 11 buildings that are included in that. Let me see if I have that information.
Does that include Iowa? The
No.
community center? No, because that's something
Iowa-
that's probably going to go once we get the new community
Right.
center.
Well, that was one of the main impetuses too, is, the Iowa roof has never been repaired. We got a quote, it was a few years ago, was to replace that roof was $750,000. But in essence, what a facility
So that,
evaluation would do, they'd go through
that's not part of it, that's
It's not.
going.
I can get you the.
No, it's.
I think it's the campus around here, the buildings here.
Right, any
Yeah,
other-
and the 2 fire stations, and we're replacing, I think, Steve Stapleton mentioned the overhead doors, so that's on the docket to replace, and.
Any other questions? Trustee Patrick.
We've got one last one regarding the Iowa Community Center. If it's in works to be demolished, at what point will the village start to plan what is going in its place, if any?
Well, yeah, so we're looking about a year out, and we've already have ideas about, one of the topics of discussion when we had the input meetings was green space, that we're losing green space. So we would replace the building with green space, a ball field, that we're going to maintain one ball field at Lions Park. So we have 2. So we would replace the community center with a ball field, and probably there's enough room out there to incorporate either soccer or football field, because the Warrior football team, the youth, they lost their practice field over by Jackson Middle School. So we try to incorporate football, soccer, and a baseball field in that location.
Will we be maintaining the same parking lot then?
We might be able to go a little smaller with the parking lot. And then, on the weekends, just get ask permission from the school district to park over in their lot.
What about the playground equipment?
All that has to stay. That's an OSLAD grant.
Okay, so that'll still stay.
That's got to stay for, that was 2013, 14. It's got to stay for 20 years before we could relocate it in the same location. I'd have to get approval from the DNR.
No, I'm just saying,
maybe
is it still?
relocate. It wouldn't go away, though. We couldn't do
Okay,
that.
so it's still there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Would us building a new ball field at Iowa Community Center or soccer field get us away from having an intergovernmental agreement with District 45 and using those baseball fields? Or would we continue to have that agreement with them?
Our intergovernmental agreement with District 45 expired in 2017.
Okay.
So from 2017 to 2021, we continued to maintain their fields and mow their property because we were negotiating staff and the previous administration was trying to negotiate with the school district to get free use of their facilities. We were maintaining their fields and everything, but we were still getting charged an hourly rate to use their gyms. So we were trying to. There was negotiations going on, and there was some back and forth with the intergovernmental agreement. We did think we had an agreement, and then in January 2021, there was no agreement.
So moving forward then with the projects that might be going on at the Iowa Community Center, would that reduce our resilience or our reliance on maintaining those or having an obligated contract with District 45 to maintain those?
We no longer maintain their baseball fields over there. No.
Okay.
So, but there, I mean, there's still the door is open that we can still negotiate and get an IGA that's beneficial to both sides, and we could go back and start maintaining the baseball fields and mowing their fields at Jackson and Jefferson. We could still do that in the future. That's open for possibility. Sure.
Go ahead, John.
Well, President Cazone and I and the school board president and Tony Palmisano are trying to have some conversations about that. I know that they have discovered that it is more difficult to maintain the fields at low cost than they thought, and I think they're interested in opening discussion about and I think it's just a good idea to have a better relationship with them. So I think that's just, I mean, they think there's a lot more involved, courts and other basketball courts, tennis courts, other things where a good cooperative agreement would be beneficial anyway.
It's just a caveat. It has to be beneficial for both parties.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Trustee Kumar.
Yeah, along that same lines, I'm just finishing up at coffee with the board. Actually, one of the ladies from the Baseball Association came up, and she was a little distraught at the way she was very happy with how the village was maintaining the field.
They
And
did it for years.
yeah, did it for years, and very distraught with the way the school board has been maintaining the fields. So that's something to take into account when the discussion comes up, maybe, and kind of make a good cooperation and cooperative agreement in that.
And I don't want to just brag on, I know we got to get on to other things, but it's tough. That's a skill to learn how to drag a field and get it right and time it and everything. And so I think that's hard. There's a learning curve. And so, yeah, I think it's better to not duplicate services in the community. And
I mean,
I'll
it's a
stop
loss
there.
for everyone. And as we add fields in Iowa, there's going to be a person who's doing this that knows their stuff. And so that will certainly be helpful.
Well, it helps, when we had mentioned, and I'll stop after this, but it helps that we incorporated college kids that were able to work weekends, and even when it rained, in the past we had full timers and they would be out till 3 o'clock and do the fields and then be gone, and then it could rain at 4, and so we hired college kids. And they would start at 10 in the morning and work till 6. And they would be working the fields if it rained up until game time if needed. And so the customer service was there. And I don't know the schedule of the school district and how they did their fields. But
Okay. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
One more.
One more.
One with 2 presidents.
Assistant Manager McVeigh, I printed off some of the maps and things, just a larger, a little easier to see than on the large screen for the board. I can get going as she starts, so thank you, Manager Harline and President Cazone. As stated, we kind of have a two-part. One is kind of the Public Works Department and kind of our operational side. And then always tied into Public Works is also our capital infrastructure improvements. So first off, the Public Works Department is consisted of about 4 divisions, and so I do want to thank my Deputy Director, Rich Salerno, and my Assistant Village Engineer, Kevin Mannels, along with our foreman, Dennis Jetson, and our foreman, Jay Young. on helping. That I like to use a team effort on compiling the budget, as a lot of those guys are in the field. They have a better need and knowledge of what we need to do that. So we're made up of 4 divisions. We kind of have an engineering division that's headed by Kevin Manels. And we do have, currently, we only have 2 engineers. We do have an open spot for an engineer, as we were doing a contractual engineer that fully retired last May. We've been trying to look for one. The engineering field is also very competitive right now. It's very hard to get new college grads, as we're looking more for an entry level, kind of a green engineer to train up and look for some succession planning, knowing that we don't have turnover. As Assistant Manager McVeigh has said, we don't always have upward movement ability. So we do know there's going to be turnover, so we like to have some succession planning. That's kind of a key component that I've been trying to work on in this upcoming budget. Additionally, we have streets and forestry. That's headed by our foreman, Jay Young. Then we have utilities. That includes both water and wastewater. That's headed by our foreman, Dennis Jetson. And we do have the plumbing inspector as well. That's kind of a shared with community development with Mr. And that we kind of share both of those. So overall, we have 28 full-time positions in Public Works. We have 2 part-time employees. And then we have up to 7. I say up to 7, is our goal is always 7. However, that's also been very competitive the last several years, so we have not been able to fulfill all 7 positions. And then for the last couple of years, we have been putting up 4 seasonal employees. That's to help to paint our hydrants. A lot of we've switched the specification of the hydrants several years ago, but we do have a lot of older hydrants that do require to be brushed down and repainted to keep a good appearance and good working order. And then we do try for 2 engineering interns to assist in our department as well. The Public Works budget consists of several budgets, and kind of condensed it for time. I kind of lumped all of our corporate funds, which are the funds listed across the top, onto one page. Mostly this is our operations, so we try to strive to be about the same as every year. There's, like in street maintenance, street administration, engineering, there's slight increases, and that's mostly due to the rising costs and inflation that's occurring. That we're seeing it's more expensive for some materials, more expensive to hauling off waste, those sort of things. We do have some reductions. The reductions in streets and forestry, as already mentioned by Manager Harline, we used to program about $50,000 every year for contractual trimming of trees. That was cut several years ago, but always kind of put in the budget as a placeholder. The intent was to try to use motor fuel tax, MFT funding. That's not an allowable use of MFT funds, so it's always just kind of a placeholder. If corporate funds were available, we would go. We have not gone in several years. We could put that back in, but staff and I have been reviewing some maybe different ways that we can improve our efficiency or improve our operations for tree trimming, along with our tree removal, and how we move throughout the community to try to give a little bit better expectations to the residents. As it's been several years since we've kind of done blanket trimming, or area trimming of all of our parkway trees. Additionally, we've been trying to gradually increase the number of parkway trees that we're planting. This year we got about 35 of our own trees. That doesn't include any of our adopted trees, which historically the last couple of years have been anywhere from about 10 to 20 trees adopted per year. And then doesn't include any additional trees that we plan as part of our capital projects, because those trees are incorporated into those plans. So we're trying to look to increase the number of trees that we plant interdepartment to the residents. So we upped it to about 50 trees this year. Unfortunately, like everything, tree costs have gone up, and that's why that number is a little bit limited. We like to do more, but we try to plant a variety of species to keep kind of an urban canopy. So we're not just buying all maples, all oaks. We try to do a blend of trees to try to keep that diversity in the community. The other one that we're starting to see reduction in is streetlights. Our Deputy Director, Rich Salerno, has been an advocate and has done a great job of facilitating that all the village-owned streetlights are LEDs. So he was planning for the last 10 years at so many pole and LED head replacements. We are now all LED. Those have a longer life expectancy, so we do have a little bit of time before we got to start planning some replacement of those. So we do see a little bit of a lag this year that we don't need as many. We're back into more of maintaining the ones that are going to start burning out in a few years versus total replacement that we were planning the last several years. Moving on is garbage. The reason this one's kind of pulled out separately is to track. Obviously, we all know what our garbage budget. We do offer full solid waste, and then in recycling, curbside recycling, and curbside yard waste for fee. Currently, our contract is with Lakeshore Recycling. They bought out Roy Strom in the last 2 years. It's been a conversion, and they assumed the contract. That contract expires June 30th of this next year, June of 2023. So we are getting to a point, and I know Manager Harline has spoken with the board, that we need to come to a point of decision on how to proceed with the next contract, whether that be through an extension with LRS, or do we go out to bids? And that's a policy decision that needs to be discussed and facilitated. And yes, and that will be presented, LRS will be here before our next board meeting during the committee of the whole meeting to kind of discuss those. As we know, there's been several points of contention and different things with them and what they can offer and possible changes. And maybe possible ways to reduce our costs in terms of some of the cost sharing and stuff with recycling. Included in this budget, we do have our electronic recycling events that happen every third Saturday of the month. Those have been going very well, and so we've been seeing a little bit of an uptick in cost. I'm always amazed when I walked over there on Mondays how many people still have rear projection big screen TVs. But that is a very popular event and very needed. As you can see, we don't have any littering of TVs and stuff in alleys. The residents do a good job of bringing them to us. And I should also say any computer components, Christmas lights, those are additional items more than just TVs. But that's in this budget, and then any billing cost. So overall, not knowing what our next contract is going to be set in stone, we did forecast, I feel, kind of a conservative number of about a 4% increase. And a lot of that has to do with we're seeing rise in diesel costs, so we're assuming that's going to get passed to us with those trucks. The next one we have is stormwater. I should mention that most of Public Works, other than the corporate fund, is all funded, as Finance Director Howard has stated, through either enterprise or business activities. So we have a lot of our own funding coming in. I should say all of our personnel costs, other than our seasonals, are all incorporated in our enterprise or business activities. So none of our salaries actually hit the corporate fund at this time. That might be something we want to look at in the future, as it's starting to eat up a lot more of the funding available for other infrastructure improvemements. Like currently, I know our street improvement fund takes about a hit of $1 million just for salaries coming in. So our stormwater side, we do have the stormwater fee. Annually, we collect about $581,000. This next upcoming fiscal year, we will receive probably the reimbursement of the $4 million for the Jackson Pond expansion project. And we do have a DCO grant that we're working on, trying to finalize the scope of $288,500. And then some other revenue that we do get is we do have a cost share program, the 50/50 backyard drainage program. That amount of money is kind of always dependent on how many people participate. We usually forecast about $100,000 of village funding for projects. And so that would get, and we don't get 50%, I would say it's roughly probably 30 to 40% once all the costs are facilitated through that program that we receive back from the residents. And then additionally, as presented by Director Burke, we do have some large development occurring. And with those, they do have the option to buy out detention a lot of the time. So we do get some fees from economic development to buy out their stormwater detention. And then that comes back in through us to help offset some of our regional detention ponds and maintenance to manage that stormwater. Overall, operations out of here is very minimal. It's a lot of our engineering reviews that are third party. Those costs do get transferred through to the petitioner. But so we do have an operation budget of about $65,000 for this department. And the major capital projects, we'll get into it in the actual capital presentation, but it's the drainage assistance program and then some of the stormwater related portions of our capital projects. For water supply, this is mostly funded with our user charges. We're predicting about $5.46 million in user charges as we had the rate study, and the rates are already passed by the board. Additionally, we'll have, we do utilize some of the non-home rule sales tax that's dedicated towards capital projects that we'll probably need to look at about $2 million to be transferred in. Unfortunately, we have seen a rather large increase in the cost of materials for water, water piping. So a lot of our costs have increased significantly in the last 2 months, which is impacting some of our infrastructure projects moving forward. So that does rely a little bit more on that utility sales tax to make up the difference of unplanned projects. And additionally, we did receive 2 community development block grants through DuPage County, which are both $600,000. How their funding is set up is on the federal year, which is October 1st. So we are planning to hopefully get both projects in with this next fiscal year. So that'd be about $1.2 million in additional revenue and grants coming into the village. Operationally, we spend about $2.5 million. And then the purchase of water is about $3 million. So if you look at that 5.6, that's where it pretty much makes up the cost. Additionally, we have about $3.2 million in projects that are planned and not in the capital infrastructure plan. Some of the capital non-infrastructure plans include, as we talked about earlier, with Assistant Manager McVeigh, IT, we're looking at updating our asset management software to better track a lot of our repairs, our locations, service requests, work orders, not only in water and wastewater, but through Public Works overall. We have now moved to Census Analytics. That is our wireless reading capability. We're down to probably less than, I think, 500 meters in the community that don't have the meter, essentially the radio transmitter on the outside of the house. And we fully predict, or we're fully expecting by the end of next fiscal year to have almost every meter have that transmitter installed on the outside of the house or the business. So that eliminates the need of our employees to drive around in the car to take reads. We will still have some manual reads as disputes or non-reads, but to greatly facilitate that process and automate that process where we press a button, we can get reads. Additionally, Census Analytics helps us be more responsive to residents. I know talking with our finance department, the people that have the smart meters, we can set up alarms on that if their bill starts, we see a water spike overnight, it can send us alert in the morning. A lot of times it's kind of a little bit big brotherish, but we'll call that resident and say, hey, we noticed an abnormal activity. You need to go check for leaks. Not only does that save water loss for the community, it saves the residents hopefully a whole lot of money. Like an anecdotal story that we found out was we had one resident that his water bill was high all the time. And historically, he only used a few thousand gallons. We couldn't figure it out. Based on the software, we found out about midnight, 1 a.m., there was a big spike in his water bill to about 6. And we believe the neighbor was hooking up their hose, filling up their pools. And so, not very neighborly. But those are some of the software capabilities that helps us be more responsive.
Mike, I don't want to distract from your presentation, but you got like 1 or 2 minutes to talk about the cost of water and some stuff that's going on with Chicago, et cetera, and DuPage County. Go ahead.
So we purchase our water through DuPage Water Commission, and that's a pass-through through Chicago Water. When we put together a rate study, unfortunately, they were predicting not much of a rate increase. As you all experienced this year, Chicago raised their rates by 5%, which made DuPage Water Commission raise theirs by 4%. DuPage Water Commission has been currently actively working for, I think, several years. I know President Kazona have attended a few meetings on negotiating a new contract with the city of Chicago. Therefore, our contracts, I believe, come up in 23 with DuPage Water Commission, that they've been kind of sitting on them until they can facilitate that contract with Chicago to kind of set rates. I know they've been actively working hard to try to get more of a gross water supply charge, because currently we get charged the same amount as a resident in the city of Chicago for our water through DuPage. And then DuPage tax on, and then unfortunately we got to tack on for our distribution system. So they are working on those rates. Unfortunately, what that means is we get the rate increases. Chicago tells DuPage Water Commission about April, May. If they're raising rates, they give them a couple weeks' notice. In return, DuPage Water Commission gives us a letter in the mail in May saying we're raising rates 4% instantaneously. So we don't get a whole lot of advance notice to kind of bake those into ours.
They have looked at some other options, but there are no easy, quick other options.
Correct. I think the DuPage Water Commission is also at this time, because of those contracts, exploring what other options available to them to produce water. They are like the largest single supply or purchaser of water from the city of Chicago, so that's probably advantageous for Chicago to work with them. Unfortunately, we have no control at this as a village. A few other non-capital items is we do have software support. We have been working internally to do a system-wide meter swap out. This was done probably 15 years ago, but we are moving to what's called the iPearl or Omni, the smart water meters. These gives us instant reads and down to the gallon read versus the 1,000-gallon reads that the SR2s do. We were looking at possibly, I think if you remember a few years ago, maybe trying to get an IEPA loan to do this. However, COVID hit, supply chain hit, it's very hard to get meters. Additionally, looking at it, trying to take out a 20-year loan for a piece of equipment that lasts 10 years didn't seem advantageous. So staff and I are working on a 7-year internal replacement process that we try to swap out to get to smart meters. And therefore, we're just projecting about $200,000 to $250,000 a year just in meter replacement. This year alone, from January to November 1st, we've replaced a little over 400 meters, I think about 418 meters of varying size. And the goal is to continually to do that, is to continue to schedule appointments, come in the home. And then additionally, we're looking at the theme technology, increasing our technology. We've been in the process, unfortunately, we got a little bit distracted this summer, but updating what we call SCADA, or Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. This is kind of the brains of all of our lift stations and our water pump stations, water towers, and our wet weather flow treatment facility. Still outdated. We've went and met with other communities, so what they saw, we've narrowed it down, and so we're probably projecting to try to begin that integration to a new one, and that's about $150,000 spread across water and wastewater. Wastewater, we have two fees for this one. We do have our normal user fees. We get in about $2 million for that. And then our separation fee that we also have on top gets another about $300,000, the $296. And we're projecting about $5.75 million in IEPA loans. One of these we've already acquired with Monterey. That project has been started and underway. And then we do have some other loans, forecasted to be in construction in the capital projects. And this one also relies on that home rule sales tax transfers of about $956,000. Overall, our operating expenses about $1.29 million. And included in this would be some improvements to our wet weather facility, treatment facility, and I probably would use the term improvements a little bit loosely in terms of we need to replace some equipment and do some repairs to just keep it functional. And then we do also have 5 loans currently. We'll be acquiring 6. So we do have loan payments that do need to be made. Our capital expenses will reach $5.87 million. We do have the reimbursement program. This will be the SCADA facility improvements. And the other one that we pointed out in the capital would be the finalization of our update to our sanitary sewer master plan. The previous plan was conducted in 2008. We did the first phase this year, which was putting flow meters out in several locations, I believe 10 locations, and now translating that into updating our plan. It's probably presented in our capital plan. The Public Works Department before me and currently has done a great job of actually facilitating a lot of those plans. And so we're getting to the point where we need to start updating and start planning for the next 10 to 20 years, not only in our sanitary, our storm, and roadways. And with that, that's all the public works, and I can take questions on operations.
Just Patrick.
Thank you. Thanks. I've got one quick one for you, just regarding the wet weather flow treatment facility. Has the village talked with Salt Creek Sanitary District regarding the expenses that you talked about for those upgrades, the $150,000?
Currently not yet. I believe we've had some back and forth of trying to set up a meeting to begin some of those discussions and begin discussions of integrating our SCADA with their SCADA. Unfortunately, I know they're very busy and we're kind of busy, so it's kind of been kind of a phone tag game, I believe, with Manager Harline and them and myself and the administration over there. But that is planned to be conducted and begin those discussions.
I do believe that Salt Creek Sanitary District is also going through a phase right now of upgrading a lot of their facilities and a lot of their operations there. So I think it might be a good time to have those conversations, especially with the wet weather flow facility and how it feeds into there.
Yes, and we're fully on board, and we want to begin those discussions as well.
Thank you. Sure.
Good. You got anything?
Oh, okay.
Good.
Mike, in your construction project right here, it shows a lot of the Jackson Street improvement projects that surround the Jackson Pond improvement itself. I see that the year isn't projected on many of them. It's just identified by NA. Is there any way to put a year on the completion of that whole entire area?
Yeah, and that handout is actually with our next presentation. I can discuss that, but yes, some of those are under design, and so we do need to update a little bit of those years. Some of it is based on funding and what we finalize with our capital plan, and then a year could be projected.
Okay, we got another presentation, so I'll wait for that. I don't want to jump ahead.
No, sorry, I handed them out early, but yeah, that's on. I can discuss that.
I'll be patient.
Trustee Kumar.
Two questions, and I'll try to make it short. One is on the garbage and LRS, and we had some complaints and we have some positives coming back and forth, and we're gonna have a discussion with them. When are they coming out? Because I have some questions for them.
It's the committee of the whole meeting next week.
Next week. Okay, so they'll be there at the committee of the whole meeting. Oh, and that's good to know. And then the final question I had is about the pass-through, the water rates from the DuPage Commission. Do they automatically get passed through to the residents, or do we each time make a board decision? How does that happen?
So each time that's a rate increase, the rates are set in our ordinance, so that we present an ordinance to the board for consideration for approval. So the board would have to approve any rate increase. So that rate increase from DWC will get passed on, notification to President Kazone, Manager Harline, and myself, and then we would have to make the decision to bring that ordinance to the board to raise rates to the residents.
Okay, so there.
Which we just did,
We just did
ago,
this in
6 weeks
June,
ago. Yeah.
correct.
Was it that long? Okay.
Unfortunately, in our rate study, we forecasted a little bit of a rate increase. We did not forecast a 4% rate increase.
Okay, is there a way to automate that within our code? Because it seems like it's a pass-through anyway. It's not like it's in the control. How much of this is in the control of our public works in terms of the rate
It's up
raise?
to the city of Chicago and DuPage
Yeah,
Water.
so it doesn't seem like it's really in our hands.
They usually review it once a year on their fiscal year. Since I've been here in the year prior, my understanding is they kind of held rate study. I would anticipate a rate increase this coming year due to the cost, inflations that we've seen on cost of labor and materials. We can discuss that with legal counsel Wolf on what that process could be.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like if it's just a stamp that we do every time, but there may be a reason for that because we might potentially someone else might come as a seller of water to us. So you would want some kind of control over that in the future, maybe. But at this point, I don't really quickly see taking over the Chicago Water Commission and someone, because it's just a really large public undertaking.
Plus, as an
taking
ordinance,
water.
it gives the public a notice that, you know, the rate increase is coming instead of just automatically going.
Okay, so it's more about information.
Great.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm just
I'm
saying.
not sure you'd want to give over that sovereignty. And then, like, DuPage only passed on 4% from the 5% Chicago increase. So sometimes there may be possibilities, not right now, I don't think, but if you have enough of a surplus in the water fund, that you could absorb some of that from time to time. But, so I don't think you want to give up that.
Yeah,
right
okay.
to-
No, I mean, there are positives to keeping
Right.
it go through, and it's basically a once a year.
Yep.
Look at things and keeping your eyes on it is good.
And
Yeah.
it's changing. My impression, being new here, is that it's been getting a little bit more. The increases have been a little bit more recently and a little bit less. So that's one of the reasons DuPage is looking at some other options, because they're just not. They don't have a lot of options. They're kind of stuck with whatever Chicago does right now. So that's and that's been a good relationship for a long time. But you know, anyway, I don't want to go any farther. I think you can.
I can figure it out, yeah. It's fine.
Trustee Kozar.
On the operational side, what do you see as your biggest priority for this coming budget for
Operational,
1, 2, 3, yeah.
I would say on the utility side, the wastewater side, my priorities is the increase in technology to make it more efficient. The water replacement has been a high priority and will continue to be. And then lastly, we do have the gigantic elephant in the room, lead services. I did not mention that, so I do apologize. But the lead services is going to become a major issue. We have already completed our initial inventory. And as part of our system, our goal is this next year to try to get a physical inventory. Every time we go in for our inspection on a sale of a home for the I&I, when it's not required, we're asking the inspector to make note of what the service line coming in is, whether it's copper, lead, or galvanized or other, and then swap out meters. We've been trying to take that inventory, and then our goal would be to try to start hitting the homes that have had neither in the last year, and ask if we can come in and take just a look at their service line to get a physical, so we have a hard number of how many actual lead services that we know in the community.
Is that a budget item in 2023?
It's not a budget item because it's more of an inventory. We're still be an inventory. We have to submit our final hard inventory to the state in February of 2024. And I believe we have to have our plan to how we plan to replace them by 25. So we still have a little bit of time. So budgetary, other than staffing, it's not hitting the budget yet. Other than, I would say, like in the capital cost, we're seeing the increase, obviously, in the increase of what it would cost to replace water lines, because now we have to forecast a whole lot more service line replacement. Monterey, we forecasted 100% service lines just to be safe, with the anticipation it's probably going to be 90% of those service lines needing to be replaced due to lead.
So you would, in addition to that, though, on the budgetary side, you had mentioned technology as being probably your number one priority.
Correct.
Is that technology also part of the other systems that were talked about earlier, the more encompassing?
Correct, yeah. We kind of put it on hold to look at the integration with the system village-wide.
So would that be some sort of line item in the budget? I mean, you know, how do I support that technology for Public Works? Or do I just support it for the overall package that you're talking about?
I think once we figure out the software and the costs, we do have a budgetary line item of about $100,000 in Public Works budget for our portion to support the utility side of that software.
Okay, thank you.
Quick, do you know roughly how many meters we do have in the village?
We have slightly over 4,000, probably about 40, no, I'm sorry. We have 7,200. We have about 7,200 meters. We need to replace about 4,000 to be smart. What I call smart, the high accuracy gallons. So it's going to take a while.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll ask later, that's fine.
So moving on to our capital improvement program, I always like to take a look back and see what we've completed. While we haven't done a numerous amount of projects, we have done a substantial amount of work. We've completed the construction of the Maple Area Improvement Project. That was a rather large, significant area of sewer separation and street rehabilitation. We have now, this fall, began the construction of the first section of the Washington Sewer Separation, otherwise known as the Monterey Improvement Program. That's a slightly over a $4 million project, $4.4 million. And we began construction. While you might not physically see it, you might start seeing the fence up, survey stakes, and in the next week or so, some shovels out there for the Jackson Pond expansion. And I did forget to include, we did have the first phase of Rebuild Illinois, which was the resurfacing of a few streets, a little bit of Elm Division in North Wisconsin from St. Charles to Division. Additionally, we began that the sanitary sewer master plan update with the metering to compile that. Overall, between our 50/50 sidewalk program and our capital construction projects, we updated 2 miles of sidewalk. And so we've been kind of keeping a tally in Public Works since 2014 on a lot of things. And so that's about 18.9 miles since 2014 of sidewalk improvements. Additionally, this past year we did about 5.1 miles with the pavement rejuvenation to try to maintain the nicer, newer pavement that we've had. And then so overall, in addition to that, with the Maple area, the rebuild, about 2.41 miles of streets either received some maintenance with resurfacing or capital improvements with reconstruction in 2022. So what that kind of looks like on a big map, that one's not part of your handouts. It's just kind of a reference. These are all the capital improvement projects that have been completed since 2014. So you can kind of see how that's impacted the community, throughout the community, within the last 10 years of major improvements that have been achieved with the support of the council and the board. I believe the handout Trustee Cielo was talking about, this is our referendum. I believe a few meetings ago we had some questions concerning where we're at on the referendum. The 2014 road referendum. It's very small to see there. It's just kind of blurry, so I made it slightly bigger, but not much on your handouts because it is a long list. And it does show what we kind of get through is went through in the segments that was identified in 2014 of what their status is, whether it's completed, active design, or what we call planned, and the years of completion next to them that you can't see. To answer your question, Trustee Cielo, some of that's dependent on the future planning and funding. So some of these are active in 23. So we need to update them once we finalize the budgets that they'll be planned for construction in 2023, but they have not been approved yet to go out for bids, and that's the only reason we haven't. Right now, we're left with essentially 3 streets, or 3 segments of streets that have not been at least in design, and they all are dependent on Washington phase, the second phase of Washington be designed first before we can design those, because they're reliant on underground improvements as well, and not just surface. So we're fully hopeful to be done with all the referendum by 2024 with construction, or at least be under construction in 2024. With that, so what that means 78% of those roads, or 15.2 miles, have been completed. Right now, we have about 3.45 miles that are under design. We're about 17.5% of the roads, with 1.7 of those miles are in the proposed budget for 2023. And then the last 0.9 is planned in fiscal years 24 and 25, depending on funding and the construction schedule. As we all know, there was a lot of delays this year that were unanticipated with the strike. And then right now we're seeing a slowdown on a lot of things because there's a concrete shortage. So a lot of companies are only getting so much allocation of concrete each week, which has really slowed a lot of constructions. And for anybody watching at home, you can find some of this information, not this chart, but each project broken down by years and information on those projects on the village website. If you go to our departments, there's a referendum page. You click on it, it'll take you to where a lot of this information can be found. Additionally, there's been some questions on how are we doing with our capital sewer separation improvement projects. On this map, you'll see any line that's colored in orange, those are sewers that have been separated. Additionally, any lines that you kind of see in red are projects that are being designed currently. And obviously, the portion in green is the Monterey, that's the portion that's under construction. And then any remaining items, the blue items, are the ones that have not been separated. So what that equates to is currently we're about 85% separated. Right now, we have another 2% under construction, and then we have 6% under design. So if we can complete these projects within the next fiscal year, we'll be at 94% separated by the end of '23, pending loans, pending construction, and all that, but that is what we're planning to do. With the remaining 2%, mostly being the final section of the Washington sewer separation. We do have a few projects that we got to look for planning that were never identified in the original plans. That pretty much is the portion in the north of Harvard, from St. Charles, pretty much up to the railroad, and then Monterey and Wildwood near the treatment plant. So we're probably looking for those in 26, 27 to become as nearly 100%. A few of those smaller segments in blue are unfortunately some small locations where we could not achieve due to elevations, but we've limited it down to maybe 1 or 2 street curb inlets that are still in the combination. So what does that mean? So this are the projects, and this is on the map on the handout so we can see it in greater detail. Locations of the projects that we are planning for fiscal year 2023, and showing the distribution of where they're at throughout the community. And I kind of broken them out by the types of projects. So kind of our street pavement related only projects. We have the Tri-Trail construction, the Tri-Trail connector construction that is planned in 2023. And that is funded through the STP funding that we receive through DMMC, and so that's funded through IDOT. So you won't see the money necessarily in our budget, as that money gets paid from IDOT for pay estimates for the construction. We do have some funding for the construction engineering in our budget, as we have to pay for that portion, but the actual construction is not. We have what's called the Rebuild Year 2 roads, which is planned for $800,000. This is the second portion of the money that we received through the state for the Rebuild Illinois bond funds that we have to utilize by 2025. We're looking at some additional resurfacing down on Central, Cornell. I apologize, I have it up in a second. I don't have them all memorized yet. So we'll be looking at Central from Addison to Cornell, Cornell from Central to Kenilworth, Congress from Ardmore to Summit, Harvard Street from St. Charles down to Central, and most likely Cornell from Park to Madison. As this year's came in about $100,000 under budget, which was greatly appreciated. So we'll be utilizing that funding. We do have our normal road maintenance. We've upped it to about $600,000 in this budget, and what that includes is additional resurfacing on roads that just need some resurfacing, or large pavement patching, or reclamine, or pavement rejuvenation, striping of roadways and crack sealing. Then we're also looking at doing North Wisconsin from Vermont to Ridge as part of one of the projects that was in the referendum that does not require any underground utilities. For water system improvements, this will be the Michigan and Vermont, and that will be Michigan from Vermont to Plymouth. We're looking at an estimated 1.4, so we have to supplement this. That was not our intent, but unfortunately that is the portion of water main supplies have gone up. We do have $600,000 from the CDBG grant that will fund the majority, will fund $600,000 of it. And then I've been utilizing a lot of our crews to try to do some main replacement as well to save on cost. And this year we're looking at doing some internal projects with water main extensions or connections internally. And one of them would be including going from Beverly to Douglas, or Beverly to Chatham to Douglas through the Metro lot to kind of create loops on that side of town. All those lines are dead end now, and with conjunction of the Ecoterra
Harris project. We want to provide a loop across the backside so that we have a loop system in that location. So we've budgeted $75,000. That's materials only, and Public Works crews will do the install. Additionally, to help reduce some of the cost of the new community rec center building, we need some water lines relocated with that. So we're planning on doing that internally, as there's limited services that we would have to re-tap. And so we're planning about $500,000 to reroute that water main down Wildwood from the Bend over to Euclid. Currently, it kind of splits that lot and needs to be relocated. So we're looking at utilizing our crews to help reduce the costs and reduce the cost to the community rec center. The sewer separations, obviously, we have the Monterey project, which is $4.4 million. It's under construction. And we're hopeful to get the loan for South Wisconsin. This would be Wisconsin to Kenilworth, and then Westmore from St. Charles to the UP Railroad. That would be about $5 million. And that would be supplemented mostly with IEPA loan for the sewer separations. And then lastly, we have a lot of stormwater improvements. Obviously, we're just beginning construction of the Jackson Pond expansion. The second phase of that would be the Jackson area improvements. These are the street improvements, the additional storm sewers to connect off of Michigan to help facilitate that stormwater over there. We're estimating about $3.1 million for that, and then we have the drainage assistance, and then we also have the Yale sewer improvements from Jackson to Madison. I would say if you note that, I know Wisconsin's one of our worst roads in the community, and with these two projects, or three projects, if we can get them completed, Wisconsin will mostly be reconstructed or resurfaced from one side of town to the other, because we'll have Jackson to Washington with the Jackson area. If we get the loan, we'll have Washington to Kenilworth this year with the rebuild we did from St. Charles to Division, and if we can do the northern portion. So that will hopefully make Wisconsin, because I know that's one of the streets out there that we get a lot of complaints on, and get that rebuilt. Additionally, Manager Harline has stated earlier about being shovel ready. So we are advancing engineering on several projects. The first one is the Villa Avenue improvements for streets. This is also DMC funded for 2025. So we just passed the resolution to begin that engineering study and partnering with Elmhurst on that. We do have funding for the Villa Avenue Bridge design, the phase 1. You should see that forthcoming here hopefully soon. We do have some funding, bridge replacement funding for that available to us. We're waiting on IDOT to review the contract first before we can present it to the board for approval. But to get that prepared so that we can start seeking additional funding to go to phase 2 and ultimately construction to replace that. It's a double culvert, but what's deemed a bridge on Villa Avenue down by the golf course. And then also, as presented earlier, we do have money in there for the grade separation study. This is the phase 1. We are looking at 3 locations, but both locations to be for pedestrian or auto, so 6 locations total. And see the evaluation and begin the preliminary work that hopefully help us get grant funding for a separation, either a pedestrian or vehicle separation in the community. And then we're also beginning design for Bierman and Myrtle improvements. This would be an IPA loan for water main improvements. Ira in Vermont, we kind of put money in it for this year's budget, as that's a 23-24, as that's the next one for CBDG funded. And then our wastewater one, it would be, we're designing the next section of the Washington sewer separation, which is Washington from Monterey to Euclid. And then Euclid, including the separation of Euclid from Highland to Madison. And that's a kind of a very quick and in-depth, at the same time, breakdown of what we're planning for capital improvements.
Thank you. A quick question on the capital improvement plan on the drawing. Like the southeast corner of Madison and Villa, there's a square, a blue square there. What project is that?
Madison and...
The southeast corner of Madison and Villa.
You're talking about this block here?
Yeah, right there.
That is the golf course, Sugar Creek Restoration Project.
Yeah, okay.
That is beginning construction. I should have noted, I apologize.
Oh, that's
This
fine.
includes all the capital. However, we do have the golf courses, Sugar Creek Restoration in there. We do show, as you can see up here with the pointer, the rec building constructed. We didn't, I apologize, Greg, we did not show the Island grant on there. And then probably one caveat is we still might have to budget for, we're still working through that. Director Gola and I have been in discussions with the DuPage County Stormwater Management Department, and they are probably looking at funding the Lufkin Pond expansion project in this upcoming year. It's not been finalized yet, but we've been in discussions back and forth, and how does it correlate with our Island grant, and working together for a design that facilitates both needs of stormwater and the Island grant. And I want to say like last week, in the last couple of days, they've even stated that they're probably planning for 2023 construction. We just don't have the numbers to know if there's a cost share associated with it or not, or if they're funding it solely themselves.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Patrick.
Thank you. Just touching base on the Lufkin Pond then, is the plan to either dredge it or make it deeper or expand it?
The plan would be to expand it.
Expand it. So it's
Expand it.
probably further back.
Further back and around, probably a little bit more of a kidney bean shape.
Okay.
That was the discussions. Director Gola and I have met with them 2 or 3 times. And we're trying to incorporate their design with the Island grant and maybe have an interactive component between like wetlands, educational component. Unfortunately, the dredging would be solely at our cost, and it's a high cost. So that might be not available to us at this time.
But expanding it at least.
Expanding it would greatly increase the capacity during flooding events.
When could we start? When will that go into effect? When will we start that project with the Lufkin Park?
It's they kind of start and stop it several times over the year. So we're getting to the point of having probably kind of a concept drawing pretty close, as we've been trying to coordinate Director Gola's Island playground and all the components that's needed for the Island with the greatest capacity of stormwater integrated. So we're getting near of coming to, I would say, concurrence of what that might look like, which then we could probably share with the board what that will kind of look like and feel like, because there might be some changes that are being proposed, and would need to want the public know and get their input on some of that as well.
Thank you.
So I would anticipate in the next month or 2.
Thank you.
Trustee Kumar.
When we went for the Salt Creek thing, there was the IEPA person. I think they're opening up a whole bunch of stormwater grants available, and maybe that's kind of where you guys are working with them at the DuPage level. Yeah, I guess it's an online thing that's opening up in the next month or so, is what I heard. So I had discussed with that, we also have water issues on Rotary Park. It's always wet. You have that retention basin. Maybe something could be done there as well through some granting process, and it should be thought of.
Trustee Kozar.
Same basic question as before on the capital improvement side this time. What's your priority there?
The priority is to meet the mandates of funding, right? So we have the $4 million grant for FEMA for the Jackson Pond, so that's kind of our number 1 priority, to get that Jackson Pond expanded, and then additionally the Jackson area improvements to fulfill those, to fulfill that grant agreement. And obviously that provides the greatest impact to our residents. I believe the study indicated around 55 homes were affected with the flooding.
Mm-hmm.
This will greatly reduce that. So that's kind of our number 1 priority, to get that out on the streets and constructed. The finish of Monterey construction, and significantly the design of Washington Section 2 to get that underway, as that's a major component to help greatly reduce the amount of sewer or combination sewer that we still have in service. And then lastly, the third one would be Michigan and Vermont, since we do have grant funding for that as well. And then from there would be Washington and, Wisconsin and Westmore, because we do need grant funding, or we do need IEPA funding, so that's a process that might take a little bit of time.
And then, not a budget question, and we can talk about this later, but that 50/50 backyard drainage, maybe we could find some time to talk about it. We had a guy at Coffee with the Board who has issues. I don't know if that might be able to help him.
Yeah. We
I don't-
can.
Yeah, we don't need to take time here doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
I didn't really have any, just to make sure that, one of the things we didn't talk a lot about, and we're going to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $17 million on next year, of course, is the recreation center. Did talk a little bit about, that's still obviously in the plan for next year, and if you look in the building fund, that's why it's so large. And then, the vehicles, I think we talked about them, but one of the big, there's a tandem truck, a Vector truck, that between the two of them is almost $800,000 worth of cash. So those are some big major ticket items that we absolutely need. Again, the Vector truck that we have right now, this is very important. You're able to dig with water, basically. So you can dig in right in some very sensitive areas around street, electric poles, that sort of thing, near gas lines. The vehicle we have now, the tank is rusting from the inside. It's beginning to seep out, and that's a problem. So we also have a jetter hose on there. It's used a lot in sewer systems. So that's an absolute need. We've got one that was one of the projects that I brought before you last 2 weeks ago, and you guys, I really appreciate the fact that you're working with us to give us the authority to try and move forward and figure out solutions to buy vehicles that are a budget cycle or more away and change prices so much that the money we have budgeted in this year is not even close to how much it's going to cost to buy the vehicle. So that's a quick, that is a quick 3 hours and 20 minutes on how to spend $76 million without, or almost $90 million without really trying. So.
And just goes up.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. This has been so educational. Not something that we had last year. And I mean, I love the panel. I love the opportunity for everybody to come up here and, say what's important. I feel just after this meeting, I have such a better understanding of kind of where we're going in the next year. So thank you for putting it together, and thank you everybody for, you put a lot of effort into this, obviously. So it's very transparent that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck and I both said we're used to doing this on like Saturday mornings and boards, but so
yeah,
I didn't know if to threaten that or risk that. But.
Okay, I think that's about it. But yeah, thank you very much. Everybody, staff did a great job. The directors did great. Your staff assistants helped out immensely, and thanks to Manager Harline for getting this all put together today. Thank you. Okay, anything else you guys want to bring up?
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
I know I came in late.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody mentioned it, but
We had cake.
yeah. It was in the appreciation.
Not
Obviously,
quite
there's-
the cake and cookies we wanted to give you, but,
Cake or hot brownies?
Cake.
Oh, wow. Obviously, we have no public here, so we will not have any public comments. Make a motion, or a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Trustee Kumar, Trustee Patrick, second. All in favor?
Aye.
And we will close this special meeting. Thank you again.